Welcome, everyone.
Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order. In accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2023, the meeting of the City Council may be conducted via remote participation, and please note that video and audio of this meeting is being recorded and may be shown live on local access government channels and on the City of Somerville website and will be available for future review. Will the clerk please call the roll?
This is roll call. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yeah.
Councilor Davis.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Present.
Councilor Klingon.
Present.
Councilor Wilson.
Present.
Councilor Burnley.
Present.
Councilor Gomez-Molcad.
Present.
Councilor Kelly.
Present.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Present.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
With all members present, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Pursuant to Rule 32, let it be known that this City Council salutes the flag of the United States of America, and let us recall our oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth to the best of our abilities and understanding. We begin our meetings with a moment of silence. Is there anyone that councilors wish to remember tonight? Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to remember Patricia Walker of Pennsylvania Ave in East Somerville, who's been a lifelong Somerville resident, died at the age of 85, has multiple generations of lifelong Somerville residents still living in Somerville, including Judy Walker, who's a constituent of mine who I see a lot, and her great-grandchild, Jimmy Walker, who she loved and the whole family loves. I'm very sad for their loss, and I just want to let them know I'm thinking of them.
Councilor Klingon would like to sign on to that. The whole council.
Mr. President, I would just like to offer my condolences to the Walker family as well. I know Judy and her son Jimmy and her grandson little Jimmy. I did a lot of work with Judy around in the early 2014 through like 2019 on addiction recovery efforts in the city of Somerville, and we made some great strides as a group, and so my respect is with Judy and her family, and my thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I have a moment of silence as well. I'd asked us to remember Paul William Bradford, born in 1928. Paul was a resident at Faulkner Towers, just a couple buildings away. I got to meet Paul when I first started running for office and started visiting Faulkner Towers and meeting residents there. I met his wife, Carol, who maybe some of my colleagues have had the pleasure of meeting, who came right up to me and told me about her autobiography, which was called Mayflower Arab, and it tells her story as a descendant of both people from Damascus and people from the Mayflower, and I knew that this was a family that I had to get to know. They were kind enough to invite me and my wife for coffee in their apartment, and I had the pleasure to get to know Paul just a little bit, who was just an incredibly warm and kind person. And Carol actually sent me an obituary that she wrote, so I was able to learn a little bit more about Paul. He was in the Navy at the end of World War II, stationed in Washington, D.C., was discharged honorably, and then his life was really committed to a career as an artist and to his family. And Carol shared with me that he was a painter of large billboards on the side of the highway. And I want to quote this obituary here. Lady Bird Johnson created many problems when she opposed these billboards, and as a result, many companies folded along with good artists who lost their jobs. Art was a pleasure, but his family was his first love. This is still a quote, and that's the end of that. And I just want to say that Paul leaves behind Carol, as well as two beloved daughters and their families, each of whom now work professionally in the arts. So I'd ask that we keep Mr. Bradford and his family in our thoughts tonight. Will everyone who is able please rise for a moment of silence? Thank you. So we have a citation that we'll begin with, folks, and then we have a technically complicated night. We are going to obviously mostly be dealing with the budget tonight, but we also have other things on the agenda. So just briefly, I want to say after we get through the citation, we're going to take up a incredibly critical declaration from Councilor Klingon at the start of the meeting. And then we are when we get to the committee reports, we're going to discharge some items from land use. And then we're going to get to the budget stuff. And you will all bear with me patiently as we work our way procedurally through that. So, Madam Clerk, let's get to the minutes, please.
Item 1.3 is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 25th, 2023.
Seeing no discussion, those are approved.
Item 2.1 is a citation by Councilor Pineda Newfeld, commending Kathleen Hearn on the occasion of her retirement after 37 years of distinguished service as an educator, including 20 years at the West Somerville Neighborhood School.
Vice President Pineda Newfeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to read this citation and then call up a member to speak to it and sponsor a constituent here. So this is for Kathleen Hearn. Be it hereby known to all that the Somerville City Council and Mayor offer their sincerest commendations to Kathleen Hearn on the auspicious occasion of her retirement after 37 years of distinguished service as an educator, including 20 years at the West Somerville Neighborhood School. She shared her love of reading with countless emerging readers and is recognized for her generosity in building a classroom library and sharing books with her students. The councilors and the mayor offer their congratulations and extend their best wishes for a happy retirement. Congratulations, Kathleen. I know we have some of your students here as well congratulating you, but I'd like to sponsor Will and Ba to speak on this item.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, and thank you, Mr. President, and honorable members of the Somerville City Council. I just want to say to Mrs. Hen that on behalf of Somerville, words of gratitude can only have expressed our true appreciation for everything that you've done for the kids in our community. So thank you very much.
Mr. President, may I ask if Kathleen wanted to say any words? No, okay.
It was a very nice time. I lived in Prince Spring. I did not live in Somerville, but my mother was a resident of Prospect Hill for many, many years. So.
Well, if the president allows, perhaps we can take a brief recess and allow your students to come up and take a photo with you with your citation. We would love that.
Wonderful. We'll recess for a few minutes. I'll call this meeting back to order. Next item, please.
The next item will be the first item that we're taking out of order, which is item 10.2, a resolution by Councilor Klingon that the administration declare the second week of August as de-ratification week on an annual basis with a public education campaign that includes events and announcements and the full use of the city's communication apparatus.
De-ratification. Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I think we all agree that rats are a serious problem in this city, quite frankly, maybe even a public health emergency. And I know that, we struggle to figure out what to do. It seems like a never-ending battle. We have to come at it at all fronts. And one of the things I found in talking to people is, sometimes it's the property owner. Maybe they can't get the message to the tenants, or there's certain things that need to be done, like water sources and so on. And I just think if we come together as a city and really focus in on this issue, we can really make a difference and hopefully kill off a bunch of rats. And it's just something that I think is really important. I think we need to do this, and I think that I wanted to thank you for taking this out of order. I wanted to do it while all the staff is here and while people are paying attention and not at 11 o'clock at night, because again, this is something that I really hope the administration will take up. And I've talked to Colin already, and he has some ideas, and it would be just great to be able to have a public public information campaign as well as events or whatever it may be to bolster the murder of rats in the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. The entire council would like to sign on. Next item, please.
And that will return us to the regular order of business and item 4.1, a communication by Councillor Ewan Campen in his capacity as president, canceling this council's regular meeting scheduled for July 27th and August 10th, 2023.
That item is placed on file.
Item 5.1 is an order by Councillor Wilson that the city solicitor appear in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to update this council on the status of collective bargaining negotiations with all municipal bargaining units.
All right, we're going to leave this on the table for this meeting.
Item 5.2 is an order by Councillor Burnley that this council send back the fiscal year 2024 budget until it incorporates demands of residents, including funding for a new Winter Hill School, housing security, and unarmed alternative emergency response outside of the police department.
Councillor Burnley?
I'd like to have this marked complete.
Very well. That item is placed on file. At this point, I believe that Councillor McLaughlin would like to discharge some items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wow, again, really fast on this agenda. One moment. I would like to discharge from the Land Use Committee. Sorry. Item 23-0506, which is affordable housing and jobs linkage fees. And item 23-0660, which is an affordable housing amendment.
Excellent. Seeing no discussion, those items are before the council.
Item 23-0506 is a request of the mayor requesting ordainment of an amendment to section 12.2 of the zoning ordinances to reflect the recommendations in the 2022 Somerville linkage nexus study.
Thank you, Mr. President. So these are two items that I definitely proudly support, and I'm glad to see that it's moving forward. I will say the reason I'm asking to sever these items today is unfortunately because of what we discussed with the communication and logistical issues around the Land Use Committee. So I really wanted to make sure that these items were both approved before we went into recess, because I believe they're items that people will support. And I honestly don't know if I'm going to be able to host another Land Use Committee meeting. We had one scheduled for next week, but it was canceled because it will be canceled because the public notice never went out for it. So that once again just highlights the need for more communication and more staff with the planning department. But anyways, what this item is an increase to our linkage fees with affordable housing and jobs, which I know many years ago, when we passed the linkage fee, people around this horseshoe wanted to get the highest rate possible, and we were kind of negotiated down. I think we got much higher than people expected, but I'm happy to say that the city is now saying that we can go even higher than what we had before. So I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I do believe there should be some city staff or consultants here today to discuss this item. So if people had questions, you can ask them, and I would hopefully consider this for a vote tonight.
Excellent. If the administration wishes to speak, you're welcome to. If there are questions, I know that we have staff on hand. Director Galagani, did you wish to speak on this?
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't wish to speak and say much of anything. I know there was a great discussion at the Joint Committee a couple weeks back. I just want to note that we have two staff available also to answer any questions that you might have, William Blackmer and Morena Zelaya, who are available online, I believe. But I'm here as well, too.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to either Director Galagani or whomever from the administration can answer the question. So first part of my statement, just to be clear, you referenced, Director Galagani, the conversation that we had at the committee level recently. There was a conversation. There were some issues raised and some sort of thoughts and responses discussed. Is it the administration's position still that does the administration still support these two amendments as proposed?
Yes, our position has not changed.
Sorry, Mr. President, I didn't quite catch that.
Sorry, the mic wasn't on, Director.
Our position has not changed.
And that position is?
To recommend approval of the amendment as presented.
Okay, Thank you. Mr. President, briefly on the item, so the good councilor from Ward 1 referenced the last time that we were able to increase our linkage fees. I think we actually created the jobs linkage fee at the time. I remember because I was standing up there chairing land use committee when we all used to come in here in person and have committees of the whole. So thank you to everyone who's done away with some of that unnecessary pomp and circumstance, I guess. The result of that, though, is that these conversations happen in committee, which I fully support. But I want to make sure that folks, at least hear sort of the rationale here. We have a nexus study that was performed that recommends these amounts. So this is purely based on the recommendation of the consultant, who is an expert in the field. Unlike the last time around, we don't have pushback from the administration. We are on this. The administration supports these, and so I say this to, if anyone's wondering why we had such a long discussion last time, and here we are tonight bringing this up after just one committee meeting. It's because the administration and what appeared to be the will of the committee are in line here. And so I appreciate that. I fully support these amendments. I think that these are, for folks, to be clear what this is actual payments made to both the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the Jobs Retention Trust Fund for projects over a certain size, commercial developments over a certain size. So this is one of the ways that was mentioned last evening that we add additional funding to develop affordable housing, to retain affordable housing, and to fund our job program efforts. It's a great resource. It's one of the few tools we have as a municipality, and I enthusiastically support both of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilson, then Gomez-Mokad.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make the point here that we keep hearing how we risk killing off the new growth in the city with this, and I just want to state we're already seeing a slowdown before we've done anything with this. When this slowdown does fully kick in, it's going to have nothing to do with linkage fees. It's going to have everything to do with global market conditions, and just proactively call out any bad faith arguments we hear down the road that linkage fees are responsible for any slowdown here. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gomez-Mokad.
Yes, I want to highlight a nice plan that OSPTT gave us regarding development projects impacted by potential linkage change. And I want to clarify something. It's not during the building permit that we capture the linkage fee. Is when we're doing, if it's a plan unit development, it is captured under that. Is correct, or other? I'm trying to look at the other terminologies, I'm sorry. A master plan special permit, it is during that process. So all the larger projects, it looks like pretty much that we have under that wouldn't be captured, except it looks like 2 sites on Boynton Yards is about it. Does that seem about right?
Through the President, that is correct. The map shows and describes what the trigger is, and typically the trigger is the issuance of a master plan special permit, a special permit, or a site plan approval if a special permit is not required. That's when we start counting. That's when we lock in the rate for that specific project.
Thank you. And I just want to make a slight observation. It just shows us how tight we are for commercial space. And this plan reminds us, and this is why this linkage fee is so critical for us. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to talk too much on this. I have 2 points that I do want to make, though. I think anyone who cares about affordable housing in Somerville should read this Nexus report. I think the point that often gets lost in the conversation around linkage fees is new commercial development creates pressure on the housing market and on the existing jobs. These are mitigation fees, and if you read this study, it says that the actual number that we should be charging to offset those is a lot higher, and the reason that we're setting it where we're setting it is so that we remain competitive and that some of these developments actually happen in Somerville as opposed to our surrounding communities. And I think that's a really relevant point, just to say this is not about us fleecing a bunch of large developers. This is about us taking what is due to the city to try to mitigate some of the negative effects. that are happening to our housing market. And second, a few others have mentioned this, but the business community showed up at the public hearing and made the point that the market is in a downturn and this is the wrong time to do this. And members of the planning board, members of the council asked our consultant, Carl Seidman, to respond to that, and he basically said, as Councilor Wilson said, the large macroeconomic forces that are deciding whether these projects can happen so far outweigh the effects of this linkage fee. The linkage fees are not the determinative factor on this. This is about projects that are going to happen. This is about us doing everything that we can to mitigate that. So I'll stop talking, time to vote. But we do have a recommendation from the planning board to take up and an item that Councilor Gomez-Moacad referenced that is a map of which projects currently in the pipeline will be affected. And I saw Councilor McLaughlin after we take up those items.
Thank you, Mr. President. The item referenced was item 10.7, an officer's communication from the Executive Director of the Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development conveying information regarding item 23-0506, an amendment to section 12.2 of the zoning ordinances to reflect the recommendations in the 2022 Somerville Linkage Nexus Study. And item 10.6 is an officer's communication from the Planning Board conveying recommendations for items 23-0506, 23-0635, and 23-0660.
Thank you. Those items are placed on file. Councilor McLaughlin.
Mr. President, remember in the spirit of our good friend Van Hardy, I would like to move for approval on these items, or this item.
Excellent. Let's call the roll.
You want to do approval, and then I'll call the roll on enrollment.
That item is approved. And now enrollment and ordainment.
On enrollment of the amendment to section 12.2 of the zoning ordinances, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Moacad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is enrolled. And on ordainment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Moacad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is ordained.
Excellent. Congratulations. Thank you, Director. And, as Councilor Davis said, thank you to the administration for holding fast to this.
And the next item then is item 23-0660, a request of the mayor requesting ordainment of an amendment to section 8.1, affordable housing of the zoning ordinances to remove errant text and amend the dimensional standards.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Far less dramatic, but still important is a housing amendment to help assist 100% affordable housing. This is just going to allow flexibility for about 100 lots in the city along main streets to allow more affordable housing. It'll have minimal dimensional flexibility to maximize affordable units, and it only applies to 100% affordable housing units. I would like to take this item up today and approve it with the will of the council.
Any discussion? Seeing none, that item is approved.
And that will bring us to enrollment of the amendment to section 8.1, affordable housing of the zoning ordinances. On enrollment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Moacad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is enrolled. And on ordainment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Moacad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is ordained.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councilor McLaughlin, for shepherding those through the committee. Next item, please.
Thank you. So that will return us to the regular order of business once again, and item 6A, a report of the committee on confirmation of appointments and personnel matters, meeting on June 20th, 2023.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our committee met for a brief, less than 30 minutes, on on the 20th. We had 4 of our 5 members present and 1 absent. We took up 1 confirmation, which was the promotion of David Farino to fire lieutenant, as well as accepting the meeting minutes from the last meeting. We heard a little bit about David Farino from Chief Breen and all the work he's been doing as acting lieutenant already in the Somerville Fire Department. He's also a military veteran, holds a bachelor's in fire science, has been an honor guard for the city for 10 years, and we got to know a little bit about, some of the things he's looking forward to, any surprises in the role he's had already. And we did vote, all 4 of us in favor with 1 absent for this confirmation. And then we did go into executive session. No votes were taken. We came out and voted to recommend this promotion. And with that, I ask that this committee report be accepted as submitted.
Excellent. Seeing no discussion, that committee report is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. That will bring us to one additional item we're going to take out of order, which is item 10.4, a request of the mayor, requesting the appropriation of $319,923,766 to fund the fiscal year 2024 general fund operating budget.
All right, so now we're going to get to the budget stuff, folks. Here's how I'd like to proceed. I'd like to ask Director Mastroboni to introduce the amended budget. We were just handed a memo. After that, we're going to sever the item 6E.2. That is the water and sewer rate. Councilor Scott would like to have a discussion on that. After we've severed that, we're going to lay it on the table. We're then going to take up all of these Finance Committee reports at once. And I'm going to ask if there are items coming out of the committee. For example, I know there were a bunch last night that were discharged without a recommendation. If there are items that folks do want to discuss, tell myself and the clerk those numbers, and we will remove those from the batch approval. So if there's anything that people want to discuss before voting, we'll pull out those numbers. Then we're going to approve the stuff that doesn't need to be discussed, and then move on to the discussions. And I will remind folks how this is going to go. We're going to start with Director Mastroboni. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. President. Budget Director Mike Mastroboni, the City of Somerville. I'm here to walk through the memo that I shared with council members earlier this evening. Will also be posted on the website. Before I run through this, briefly, these items are reflected in tables budget-wide. We still have to work on the narrative in the coming days, perhaps after a good night's sleep tonight, just making sure that before we PDF the final budget, all of these are exactly represented, but the amended appropriation order in front of you reflects all of these changes. So what I'll do is I'll go through briefly the 3 different categories that are broken down in the memo, and then answer any brief questions as I can, and then allow you to do your business. So the first category within the memo are corrections and adjustments to the proposed budget. These were either presented or discussed at departmental budget hearings, or have additional information that's happened in the last, throughout the month of June. None of these are policy changes or changes that would affect the individual budgets themselves, aside from corrections. You'll notice a number of them are corrections to salary prorations. I think we've learned a lot using our new ClearGov software this year, and look forward to a smoother process next year. I'll draw your attention to a couple of these corrections. The first is the second line down, parking. We had a bid come in much lower than expected, which we were able to reduce the parking budget by $100,000. If you see, for people who are not familiar, if you see numbers in parentheses, that's a negative, that's a reduction in that budget. So we were able to reduce the parking budget by $100,000. We've added in capital projects and project management the Winter Hill Community Innovation School project manager, which was previously approved by this council, I think a couple weeks ago. separately. And then the last one that I'll call out is in elections. Commissioner Salerno shared with me some reductions in his budget based on the fact that there will not be a preliminary election this year. So when you total all those adjustments up, adjustments down, the net result is a $203,969 reduction in expenditures in the budget. Moving to page 2, the second category, cuts made as part of the fiscal 24 budget process. Last night, this council voted to reduce the executive administration budget to remove at this time the deputy CAO position, so you see that there. This morning, this afternoon, Mayor Ballantyne elected to reinvest the $285,639 remaining when you make those corrections and those cuts into 4 different buckets. I'll walk through them briefly. We have staff on hand if you have questions. The first is $35,000 in housing stability in OSPCD to increase supports for residents experiencing housing instability. As a response to the motion, the resolution made last night by Councillor Kelly. The unanimous resolution, I believe, they may all be unanimous anyway, the resolution last night to add an additional planner to OSPCD's Planning and Zoning Division. That's the second line in there. That will enable things like long-range planning, responding to zoning amendment petitions, collaborating with the council to advance land use policy, those types of items. The third one is $100,000 in the Treasury Division of Finance. Treasurer Dubuque mentioned during her budget hearing that she was working to get quotes, to get some more information on an electronic fund transfer project. In the meantime, between her presentation and now, we're able to get an amount for that, and we've included that in the budget. Looking forward to your support on that. What that will do is support efforts within Treasury, as well as accounts payable, to transition vendors from paper checks to electronic funds transfers. Looking forward to that one. And then the last one is an additional nearly $90,000 in salary contingency, and the appropriation to salary contingency will be used as an opportunity to fund a position focused on wage theft and related opportunities there. In the 24 hours since we were all together last night, we were unable to get a job description and location. There's a lot of questions, I think, that we're working towards, but Councillor Gomez-Mocad, I believe, made that motion, and I think what we would expect, the way we expect this to go is to sort of work on that job description, work on what that looks like, and then come back for an appropriation from salary contingency to the appropriate department. So long story short, when you add all those changes up, down, the net increase in the fiscal 24 amended budget is $0. We are right back where we started, spending the exact same municipal appropriation and total budget. I will add one more item in recognition of Councillor Burnley's resolution to appropriate any remaining free cash to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. An appropriation has been submitted in the amount of $82,715. And Mr. President, if I may, I just want to thank all the staff that we have here. It's a budget doesn't happen with one person, 10 people, 100 people. It takes literally everybody in the city, especially folks from finance, Ed Bean, Megan Huckenpaller, Colleen Tam, John Mancia. Obviously the mayor staff, the IGA staff, they literally spent days of their lives working through this with us, and I want to thank them. Department heads, financial staff embedded within those departments are the only way this gets done. They put up with us as we try to squeeze every single dollar at the last minute. $337 million goes by really fast, so I really appreciate them. And last, this council, especially the Finance Committee, for your diligence and support through this process. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions there are about these. We have staff on hand, but thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Director. And on behalf of the council, let me just echo your praise and thank you for the city staff here tonight and not here tonight. Thank you all. Councillor Gomez-Mocad and then Davis.
Can I make a question inquiry about item 4? I'm going to put my project manager hat. Can we, I'm going to put you on the spot, but can we put a date of September 4th to have this job description ready? It's that's Labor Day. I'm just asking for the job description, and then it gets posted by October 15th, my birthday.
Director?
This is whimful request, but I like to put timelines on things, because if we don't stick to timelines, we don't get it done. So I'm sorry, I'm doing to you. I'm project managing you, sorry, or the city, so I apologize. And I know you can't do it on the spot, but it's a verbal request, and I'm happy to help out whichever way. And I know at the summer, things slow down a little bit, but it would be a nice gesture.
Mr. President, we'll do our best, and I think the difficulty with getting this position squared away today was the excitement around the possibilities, so we'll do our best.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. To Director Massaboni, I'll start with the biggest point here that I think can't go we can't mention this enough or more emphatically. This is, I believe, at least to my recollection, the second time that the administration took the budget process and then came back and essentially zeroed out the cuts and corrections with new spending that reflected what we've talked about. So thank you. That's how it should work. And I want to say that because it usually doesn't work that way. I'm just tickled. Even though I didn't get exactly what I wanted in here, that's okay. This is really great. I really appreciate the work that you must have all been working overnight and all through the afternoon, even just to get these 4 things, and lots of math, which you all know makes my head explode. I do want to ask about the planner position, because this isn't in the department that I had requested, but I understand, certainly within any time we're creating new positions effectively under the city council, or in this case under the city clerk, as it would have been, we just haven't done that a lot. So there's a lot of questions in less than 24-hour turnaround. Like, I get why this is sort of the path that we can take right now, and so no issue, no worries there. What did strike me, though, is the sort of, this clearly isn't a job description, but the little descriptive paragraph. My first read of this was it doesn't sound like even the thing that Councillor Chair Wilson requested, and when we initially had the 2 motions, which then were merged into one, let's have both. It sounds more like a planner, which we clearly need. Let there be no, I'm no way arguing we don't need more planners than we even have in this budget, and we obviously do. And so I want to ask, am I reading this correctly, that this is effectively, I was going to say just another planner, that wouldn't be appropriate, that this is another planner and not a new position that is specifically to focus on enabling the city council to move forward with the work of the land use committee? Either one of those is okay. I'll be more frustrated with one than the other, but that's also okay. I just want to understand what the intent is so we're clear on it.
Sure, Mr. President, through you. The intent of this is to add capacity to the planning department. That's my answer.
Okay, through the president. So my read is accurate. This is a little, there's a nuanced difference between what I was requesting, what Councillor Chair Wilson requested last night, and what we have here. And I understand, I certainly can understand how that conversation must have gone. We need so much more capacity, even than is reflected here. I understand why that decision would have been made. I'll just echo again the sincere, emphatic request that the administration and the planning folks, the director, do everything possible to ensure that, and the intergovernmental affairs, because I know that we work really well with legislative matters and we get a lot of stuff done. And if that's going to be the model, great. I just we took up 2 really big, really important, really substantive items here tonight that did have a conversation in committee. The 2 land use, 2 items that were pulled out of land use, but I'm not super comfortable with that. Right? I mean, we usually have more in-depth conversation and more opportunity for public input about even clearly beneficial changes like we did tonight. So I hope that the administration and the planning department specifically will hear our request, because I'm frustrated to hear that it sounds like we're not going to have another land use committee meeting, and again I get it's all because of capacity overall, but we'll certainly take this. I'm happy to have, once we get it filled, another person doing all of the important work that the folks in planning do, but I need to say that again, because to me that's been probably the most significant problem that we've had in terms of sort of the operation of things this year, because as I said last night, zoning is the most powerful tool we have, frankly, as a municipal government, to some degree, and certainly from a city council standpoint. So not being able to do that really impacts our ability to make a difference. So thank you.
Mr. President, if I may, we hear you, we understand. I think this chamber works best, these committee meetings work best when we're working together. That's the intent of this position. We know that land use is extremely complicated and that there's a lot of value in support and working together. And I will say to your first comment, I think you're looking at a room full of department heads who didn't get everything they wanted, who are a little bit frustrated. So I think you'll find a lot of friends in the audience tonight. So I think we were able to do a lot of great things, but not everything for everybody. And I think that this will be a really positive move forward. And we appreciate your comments.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the song goes, you can't always get what you want, but if you try, you get what you need. Question, just to be very direct through you, will this position help the Land Use Committee fulfill its obligations?
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you. I'll take what I can get for now, and we'll see how it goes, and I appreciate the consideration.
Thank you. Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. Yes, I am, through you, Mr. President, to Director Massabroni. I want to personally thank you for the adjustment and the responsiveness, and for the extra amount going to Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I'm really excited about that. I want to thank Councilor Burnley for bringing that forward, and colleagues to the rest that really saw things that they liked in here, that they advocated for. I hope that we can all take a moment of just grace and thank the administration for the responsiveness, because this is something they didn't have to do this. So at least we can acknowledge that. I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, so now we actually have to do all the work. Thank you very much, Director, and I'll echo the gratitude to Mayor Ballantyne and to everyone here for all your work throughout this, and in particular for this really fast turnaround. I don't need to repeat others. So the first thing we're going to do is Councilor Scott moves to sever 6E.2, and after we do that, I'll move to lay it on the table.
And that item is item 23-0550, the Director of Water and Sewer, conveying the fiscal year 2024 water and sewer rate proposal.
Excellent. So we're going to lay this on the table and move through the rest of the committee reports, and then we're going to have this conversation.
So that brings us to item 6B, a report of the Committee on Finance, meeting on June 5th, 2023.
So, Madam Clerk, I think it makes the most sense to take up all of the Finance Committee reports at once. Before we approve them, which will have the effect of approving the items within them, I'd like to ask if there are items in any of these committee reports that councilors wish to set aside for discussion before we do our approval. Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Should I read the items? Okay.
Please.
To the clerk, I've got a couple of items. Item 6.J19, the mayor's request on rescinding unborrowed funds. 6.J20, the rainy day fund item. 6.J21, the salaries and wage stabilization 6.J46, the Emergency Response Stabilization Fund, and 6.J47, the accompanying language around that. And I believe that's it.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, so then in conjunction with item 6B, we will have before us item 6C, a report of the Committee on Finance, meeting as a committee of the whole on June 5th, 2023. A report, item 6D.
Can we waive the reading of these?
We can.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Seriously. The Finance Committee met on 8 evenings over the past 3 weeks to do our duty of financial oversight by reviewing the proposed FY 2024 budget. In general, I was extremely pleased with how this went. We got underway on June 1st, just hours after news had broken about the closure of the Winter Hill Community Innovation School building due to that concrete that fell on the stairs there. Due in large part to interest in that situation with the Winter Hill, we had a massive turnout for the public hearing on June 5th. I think at one point we topped out at over 380 audience members in attendance in that public hearing. While there were some hiccups at the start and the length of the meeting resulted in interpreters needing to leave before the end, I still was very happy to see us serve as sort of guinea pigs for the new language access plan with our interpretation there. As I mentioned last night, over the 6 evenings when we held departmental budget hearings, we met for a total of 17 hours and 52 minutes. That's a massive 43% reduction in meeting times from last year's modern record. And as stated last night, part of this was down to the full rollout of the pre-submitted questions approach, while a lot of it was just simply down to a commitment on everyone's part to be economical with our words. In the end, we ended up cutting last night, as we just went over the Deputy CAO position and Executive Administration, and passing resolutions for additional funding for alternative emergency response and affordable housing, and not one, but 2 resolutions for that new planner position that we just heard about. Yeah, that's budget season in a nutshell. So once again, I want to express appreciation for my colleagues on finance and for everyone from the city staff, from the administration who worked on this, spent all those hours together over the past 3 weeks, and I ask the committee report be accepted as submitted.
Excellent. So we have 5 items that we're going to exclude from this vote. Not yet.
Because those were no recommendation anyway.
They're no recommendation anyway. So we're going to accept the committee reports, which puts all of their contents before us. Seeing no further discussion, those committee reports are approved.
Great. So now before the council, items 6J2 through 18, and then 6J22 through 45, and then 6J48 through 58.
As well as 10.4, is that before us?
Can we put that on hold?
Sure.
All right.
All right, on those items just read, seeing no discussion, those items are approved.
With the exception of item 6J18 and 6J34, which we will place on file.
Those items are placed on file.
Great. So now before the council, item 6J19, a request of the mayor requesting the rescission of $13,232,471 of authorized but unissued borrowings.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a couple quick questions. I don't know if Director Bean, you're able to come and speak to this item. Just if you could talk a little bit about where this money was allocated towards, why it ended up being rescinded. We can take a minute if you need a minute.
Council, I'd like to bring up to the, Mr. President, the city treasurer, and perhaps
Fantastic.
Folks from some of the affected departments can also speak on this one.
Fabulous.
Welcome, Director.
Good evening. Linda Dubuque, Treasurer and Collector for the city. Mr. President, the rescission is something that's a yearly request. We don't need the funds, and so it is in the city's best interest to remove them from the list of items that are authorized to borrow.
Through the president to the treasurer, thanks for that answer. Are there any particular projects that came in under budget or just items that were complete that are resulting in this $13 million rescission of borrowed funds?
So there's a listing. I left it on the table in the back.
It's okay.
Yeah, so I think Rich Raish is probably the person who could best answer your question.
Everybody join us in the front of the room.
Director Raish.
Now it's the party. For your record, Richard Rage, Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management. These are largely water and sewer appropriations that were very specific appropriations made for specific problems at the time. They're now sort of looped into sort of our larger scale master planning and will be addressed by a more comprehensive set of projects. So we'll resend these. We will come forward for individual projects that are larger in scope.
Thank you. Through the president to you. If it's possible to you and the treasurer to upload this list, attach it to this particular item, it's just looking at that number, you know, if I was the average constituent, I'd want to know what exactly did we not spend funds on that we had borrowed for, just for, is it on there? It's already on there. Fantastic. I'm done with questions on that one.
I can make another comment, Mr. President. When the bond rating agencies evaluate the city, they look at this authorized and unissued. So we don't want to carry authorized and issue that we don't need. So we want to. So Treasurer has been very effective the last couple of years of cleaning these things out at budget time.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. All set on this item? Okay.
The next item before the council is item 23-0927, requesting the appropriation of $2,383,367 from the free cash to the Rainy Day Stabilization Fund.
Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. If we could have the Director of Finance back up. Just quick question. How much do we have in the Rainy Day Stabilization Fund with this current appropriation?
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll explain this because it's a little bit technical. We currently have $4,418,863. Now, the Rainy Day Stabilization Fund is the core stabilization fund of the city. It's a static stabilization fund as opposed to all of the others that you see for various special purposes. We've now become to a AAA bond rating community. So that's going to save us millions of dollars, hopefully, in interest rates. So the metric, the important metric for the bond rating agencies in terms of reserves is a ratio of what is called unassigned fund balance to general fund revenues that you'll find in the audited financial statements. The ratio should be 15%. Right now, the ratio for us is 14.26%. So that amount of $2 million plus dollars gets us to the 15% mark, which we want to show the bond rating agencies. So every year we'll probably, you know, this will be more of a big adjustment. We'll adjust this slightly as revenue goes up. Now, the last time we put money into this fund was 2014, so it's been a long, long time. It's been 9 years, and I probably should have done this earlier.
Through the chair, so just my quick math, that brings the Rainy Day Stabilization Fund up to roughly $7 million? Let's see, let's calculate that here.
Roughly, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't add it up. Yeah, slightly under $7 million, but it gets you to the 15% ratio.
And through the president to the public, the Department of Finance came before us on the March 7th Finance Committee meeting and had a really fantastic presentation that explained all of this and why we want to be at the 15%. So if there are folks who have questions at home, you can go and look at that Finance Committee agenda and the notes and see the presentation. But I have no further questions on the Rainy Day Fund.
Excellent. Next item, please.
Item 23-0928, a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $2 million from the free cash to the Salary and Wage Stabilization Fund.
Councilor Kelly.
Through the president, a similar question. Do we know with this appropriation how much will be left in this wage stabilization fund?
With all, through you, Mr. President, there's this appropriation as well as a transfer of the unexpended balance from the salary contingency of, I think it's roughly 1.7. So I believe the new balance is going to be somewhere, I don't have the exact number in front of me, about $7.7 million.
$7.7 million. And in an average year, how much would you estimate we appropriate out of that fund for contract settlements, wages, et cetera?
Well, Mr. President, it depends upon where the settlements are going to be. So we're in negotiations with pretty much all the unions in the city right now. I created this stabilization fund some years ago because we always want to make sure we have money there to fulfill commitments and things come up, whether it's arbitrations or whatnot. So there's no set amount, I would say. I mean, we try to estimate the best we can where we think these settlements are going to go. But as you know, you can't predict that precisely. So I'd rather put more money in than possibly what we may need.
Through the President, of course. I guess my question is, do you anticipate, given what you just said about most of the contracts being up and bargained this year, us wiping out this fund, or there will still be?
Through you, Mr. President, I don't think we'll wipe the funds out because there's one for the contract settlements and any type of, let's say, labor, grievances or arbitrations from the past that we may hit us as well. And then potentially any other salary adjustments that could be made. But again, this is subject to your appropriation from this fund.
Thank you. Through the President, I have no further questions.
Excellent. Next item.
The next item before the council is item 23-0973, a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $300,000 from free cash to fund the Emergency Response Stabilization Fund.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm actually not sure who to direct this question towards, and I think that's exactly why I'm not sure who to direct this question towards. So, of course, this Emergency Stabilization Fund, which accompanies the previous item, which is going to be used for things like providing food, temporary shelter, necessities for folks who are experiencing an emergency, is fantastic, and I think the council and our council priorities talked about this quite a bit. So I was so pleased to see this in the budget. I guess my question for someone in the administration is there a particular point person who is going to determine when these funds get allocated? I'm thinking about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Of course, folks come to us and we approve funds when they get allocated out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as just an example. But who says today is the day we need to move money when it comes to the stabilization fund?
Mr. President, I don't think we've worked out all the parameters who's going to organize this, because my concern is we've got some money here, let's get it appropriated, let's adopt the stabilization fund, at least get a structure in place. Over the summer, I think the administration will be working out exactly the contours of the parameters of how this will work. But didn't want to lose the opportunity with the free cash evaporating on June 30th, so I want to get something going on this.
Through the President, thank you for that. And part of the reason I asked that question is emergencies happen quickly, and of course we may not be able to be in session to appropriate funds on a finance committee day. So wanting to make sure there's a clear process so that when these dollars are needed, they get to the folks as quickly as possible.
Mr. President, it seems to me that once we work this out, we probably come back with some sort of blanket appropriation or whatnot, so we have that flexibility to deal with the situation.
Fantastic. With that, Mr. President, I have no further questions on the items I flagged because the previous two were taken up together, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor. So on all of those items, what do we do?
Approve them?
Approve them and there's no roll call?
And now there's roll call.
Okay, we're going to approve those items, seeing no further discussion. This does not include the entire budget, by the way. That's next.
And that places a number of items before the council for roll call votes. Those items are item 23-0829, which is a lease, 23-0857, which is the revocation of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half, 23-0904, appropriating $248,419.50 from the Facility Renovation Stabilization Fund, item 23-0906, appropriating $817,137.42 from the Facility Renovation Stabilization Fund, item 23-0907, appropriating $151,252.50 from the Street Reconstruction Stabilization Fund, item 23-0908, appropriating $69,184.64 from the Facility Renovation Stabilization Fund, and item 23-0974, creating the Emergency Response Stabilization Fund. On those items, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Scott.
Yes.
Counselor Strezzo.
Yes.
Counselor Klingon.
Yes.
Counselor Wilson.
Yes.
Counselor Burnley.
Aye.
Counselor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Pineda Newfeld.
Yes.
Counselor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all counselors in favor, those items are approved. And that, Mr. President, puts item 10.4 before the council.
Okay, this is the big kahuna. If councilors wish to speak on the budget as a whole, this would be the time to do it. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, I want to echo the tenor and tone and the complimentary nature of my colleagues towards the administration and staff who put this together. Like many people in this room, around the horseshoe and in the audience, I have my frustrations about what I'm not seeing in the budget that I think were best voiced by the residents of this city who spoke out throughout the public hearings and before our meeting even yesterday. Having said that, I do see evidence of collaboration in this budget and in terms of appropriations that were made from yesterday to today, as well as, particularly around housing, the planner. The fact that we're going to hopefully move towards electronic payments for vendors, which I am hoping, and I'm sure I can speak for my colleagues on this, hoping will lead to less late receipts and expenditures for items that we should have already paid for. And I think this all speaks towards the modernization of our government, and the importance of that is better services for our residents. I'll also note that, yesterday I put forward a resolution to establish funding for an alternative emergency response program. That is not in this budget. Having said that, I will note that I see further signs of improvement on that front. On June 28th, there is going to be a RSJ, Department of Racial and Social Justice, meeting that collaborates with one of the leaders of Cambridge Heart. And to me, that is quite commendable and helpful to explain to the public. And the purpose of that meeting is to explain to the public what alternative emergency response is. I think that is very critical and crucial for our path forward as a city, and I'm happy to see it being done. So with that said, though no budget is perfect, and though this does not meet all of my top big three issues, I'm happy to vote for this in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I said this last night, so I'm not going to go through all of that again. And I'm certainly not going to read the full report that will be submitted for our next council meeting. But I just, again, I appreciate my colleagues accepting that I'm not going to run through a set of 24 personnel cuts for roughly $2 million. I have my reasons for each one of those cuts, but the intention is not to argue with the department heads who are working under the structures that we have. My frustration comes from the extreme needs that we face imminently in the city, and what I see as a lack of proper prioritization. However, it is not my role here on the council to micromanage our mayor, as I said last night. So while I do applaud, as my colleague did, for the second time in 6 years that we've been doing this, a mayor came back and actually zeroed out the changes and was responsive. So I am grateful to all the staff that worked on this, and will give our mayor credit for being very responsive in that take. But unfortunately, just in terms of addressing the major concerns I see confronting the city and continuing to confront the city 18 months into this term, I cannot, in good conscience, vote to support this budget, but I appreciate all the effort that all of my colleagues and all city staff put into it. Thank you.
All right. I will just say this was a budget season unlike any other in a lot of ways, but as Councillor Wilson said, it was the Winter Hill School. I mean, that was having that come on the first day of the budget season. You know, to me, and I know to the public and to my colleagues, that kind of focused us with a degree of seriousness that, as kind of catastrophic as that situation is in the lives of families that have kind of been disrupted, I think it has also been a very bright moment in watching that school community come together, our district come together, the administration and this council, and kind of put aside the very real differences that we sometimes have to be really clear that we are moving forward on this together and to send that message very clearly to the public, to the kids at those schools, to the teachers. So it has not been an easy couple weeks, but I'm incredibly thankful to everyone for their work on that. I'm not going to give a speech, but I'll just say that there is a lot to commend in this budget. There is certainly a lot that I know all of us wish to see. I just want to take this opportunity to thank our clerks. Of all the people who have gotten gratitude tonight, they had to sit through the same meetings that all we did, and they just had to sit on their hands and listen to us go off. So thank you very much to our clerks. And with that, let's vote.
Would you like to do it by roll call?
Yeah.
All right. So this will be on the item 23-1118, the appropriation of $319,923,766 to fund the fiscal year 24 general fund operating budget. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councillor Davis.
Yes.
Councillor Scott.
No.
Councillor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councillor Klingon.
Yes.
Councillor Wilson.
Yes.
Councillor Burnley.
Aye.
Councillor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Councillor Kelly.
Yes.
Councillor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councillor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 10 councillors in favor and 1 opposed, that item is approved.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. Round of applause. Councillor Pineda-Neufeld.
Mr. President, I'd like to move for reconsideration in hopes it fails.
Is there anyone wishing to reconsider their vote? Seeing none, reconsideration has failed. Did I do that right?
Yeah, do we have to roll call that? I never remember. No, we're good.
Great. Reconsideration has failed. Let's take a 5-minute recess. We do have some items that might involve staff, but I don't know who wants to stick around. Yeah, that's up after the recess.
let me point out some budget to you. We just had a month of this.
No, we can't. I'm at home watching you guys.
I can point to.
You can point to me everything, but the money could be here, and you can say, when I got it right here, got it because you got extra.
No, because we get, because there are positions that we cut. We just cut 86,000 from
Then you should go my taxes.
Oh, well, see, now you're arguing something different.
No,
Now
it's the
you're
same thing.
arguing No, it's not the same.
It is the same thing,
Now
just
you're
my
saying,
money.
oh, if you have extra, give it to me.
No, not me. Lower the taxes down.
Well, yeah, that's what you're saying. If you have extra,
For you to have this on the budget, for this or for that or whatever.
And I can respect that position, but I...
No, you took extra before.
No.
So how the money is there? Where's the money came from?
Oh, my gosh. I can point to the 300 and something million.
Yes. Even the $13 billion that you're talking about, they have the authorization to borrow, but they don't need that much, or you borrow so much. I understand. But all the money that you have on the budget, all the money that you, listen,
It is taxpayer money, yes.
It's coming from somewhere.
Extra. Yeah. It's coming from commercial. We can, some of it's tax. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about. It's not.
Some of it, but not all of it.
100%, because if it's, no, hold on.
I look forward to you speaking on this.
I'm not worried about it, because I'm going to bring you examples. Example.
I'm saying you have not convinced me, but I appreciate
No, I don't have to convince you. No, I don't have to, because like I said to you before, if you don't fight for yourself, nobody will.
We'll call this meeting back to order, folks. All right. I'll call this meeting back to order. We have a quorum. I've had a request from staff. Before we get to the water and sewer, we have some staff present for items 7.3 to 7.5 that we'd like to take up and deal with. There's a time sensitivity on these.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 7.3 is a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $155,000 from free cash to the Immigrant Legal Services Stabilization Fund for immigration legal services. Item 7.4 is a request of the mayor requesting approval to appropriate $200,000 from the Immigrant Legal Services Stabilization Fund for continuing legal services. And item 7.5 is a request of the mayor requesting approval of a transfer of $45,000 from various ordinary maintenance accounts in the Office of Immigrant Affairs to the Immigrant Legal Services Stabilization Fund.
All right, so this is 3 items that are all related to one thing, and why don't we welcome whoever wishes to speak on this to explain what we're doing here. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. For the record, Maria Teresa Nagel, the Director of the Somerville Office of Immigrant Affairs. And yes, all of these 3 requests are for the same thing. Essentially, for the past 3 years, the City Council has been kind enough to provide us with approve $60,000 per year for the use of legal services to our community members. We have not only spent those $60,000 each year, but last year we actually had an appropriations request for an additional $45,000, and even then, we're just not able to cover the great need that exists in our communities. The need for legal representation amongst our immigrant residents just continues to increase, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. And what is worse is we have traditionally also relied on nonprofit partners in the area and pro bono attorneys, but everyone is at capacity and beyond. And as we know, without legal representation, many of these immigrants will be returned home. So it is critical that we do get these $200,000. And yes, I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Councillor Gomez-Mocad.
I just want to commend the administration because I was with Mayor Ballantyne at an event, and I mentioned her the need for more legal services. I had heard there was a backlog. She immediately texted. I think that night she texted Director Nagel, and I'm so glad he's here. So this just shows the care and our commitment to our immigrant community. And I want to reiterate that is another form of exploitation, like when they're not guided to the right legal services. You hear the horror stories where they put down thousands of dollars and they're left afloat. So I really thank you and commending you, everybody, for reacting so quickly on this. So thank you. This is really, I wish I could appropriate another 200, but one step at a time.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there further questions on these? All right, let's take them up together, please. All right, with no further discussion, those items are approved.
And then item 23-1072 will require a roll call vote. This one is appropriating $200,000 from the Immigrant Legal Services Stabilization Fund for continuing legal services. On that item, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved.
Excellent.
And then, Mr. President, we are going to pick item 6E2 up off the table, I believe, and take that up in conjunction with item 10.1, which is a communication by Councilor Scott conveying information regarding the fiscal year 2023 and fiscal year 2024 water and sewer rates.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to my colleagues for bearing with me for a moment. As you all, I'm sure, recall, there was an initial rate presentation that was proposed. At that time, the Finance Committee voted it down 4-1, and the City Council supported that decision. There was then a revised rate increase proposal brought back, which the Finance Committee supported 4-1. And that is what is being recommended out of the committee today and before us now because I have severed it out. However, I will admit that I continue to be vexed by certain things here. Just to recap, there are 10 vacancies out of 10 in the water department for their line workers, their special heavy machine equipment operators. Every single position in the water department that does that frontline work has been vacant for a year. And this is a problem that extends to a sewer department as well. Enormous amounts of vacancies. And these vacancies are longstanding. I had a very nice conversation with Director Haynes earlier today. The hiring has been challenging, would be an understatement. Because we're trying to hire for these frontline water and sewer positions, important critical maintenance positions in the city at $51K a year. And the proof of our last 4 years of only, I think, being able to hire 6 or so of those positions is proof that our management of those positions and how we are maintaining our water and sewer is it's unacceptable. It is unfeasible. And what it has resulted in is higher costs to the ratepayers. What it's resulted in is that almost all of that water and sewer work that needs to happen now gets done by an outside contractor who we are coming to the end of their contract right now. It's an enormous contract annually. It is well over $2.5 million. It's closer to 3.2 when you look at all the other extra additions that have to go into that just in this year alone. When you look at the burn rate we have on these contracts, it is costing ratepayers 4 times what the salaries of these positions are to actually do the work. So we could increase the salary of every union employee in the water and sewer department by 50% tomorrow and still save the taxpayers money by bringing that work in-house and getting it done here. I've mentioned this before, I've talked about this before, but I'll be honest, when we discussed this most recent rate increase proposal on the night when we reviewed the Water and Sewer Enterprise Funds budgets, their information didn't get uploaded to the page until I think when we were actually in the meeting. And so it took me a little bit to go through, and what I'd like to show you is a series of spreadsheets, if the clerk could be so kind, that I put together to help myself understand what's happening in staffing, because when I looked closely at the staffing levels that are put forward by the administration this year, I was shocked. So what you see on the screen right now is the fiscal year 23 sewer and water staffing. I believe that's sewer on the left, water on the right. Now in red, there's a certain number of lines that don't actually sit in water and sewer. They actually sit in the engineering department or infrastructure and asset management. They're here in the FY23 budget because that year, the city chose to break it out and show that 30% of the money for that position came from sewer, 30% from water, and 40% from their home department in engineering. So we can basically ignore those positions. The ones in yellow look like they may be two positions, but actually it's 68% funded out of one of water or sewer and 32 out of the other one. So really, everything with that yellow line through it is a single position. So going to the next tab, I just wanted to consolidate all of that to make it easy for me to understand who's actually working in the water and sewer departments in fiscal year 23, or rather, what positions are funded in the water and sewer departments fiscal year 23. So here we have that consolidation. Everything that was across departments, I shoved over to the sewer side because that's what our city did in this year's budget book. All of those positions now sit in the sewer department, or at least that's the page they sit on. So just collapsing this all so that we have a nice tight table going to the next one. The next tab here just collapses those down and reorders them to most closely match the order of these positions in the fiscal year 24 budget book presentation. Now, this before you were the actual positions funded in the water and sewer last year. Going to the next tab, you will notice that is this year's water and sewer staffing. And that's what struck me. So just breaking it down for FY23 and FY24 in the sewer department, our next tab, I've got it side by side for us so that we can understand that those green lines are positions that existed last year that continue to exist. The blue lines are positions that did not exist in last year's budget that are being created this year. All three of them are non-union positions: a compliance officer, a project manager, and a records clerk. And then there are the red lines there, which is 5 union positions being eliminated in this year's budget. Making the same comparison on the water side is the next tab, which is even more stark. There are 9 positions being cut and only 7 positions being retained. All 9 of those positions are union, heavy machine operator, and working foreman positions. On the text of the water and sewer pages, it is explicit that part of this is that we are moving from trying to clean our own catch basins to doing a contractor to do all catch basin cleaning. Now, it's true that there are some state problems right now with disposing of catch basin waste, right? It's very hard for cities to do that on their own. I think Boston might be the only one doing it. But that's a cartage problem, right? In terms of my way of thinking about that, we can have our crews maintaining our sewers and then pay somebody to take that waste to a disposal site. In fact, we have that kind of arrangement already with multiple kinds of hazardous waste inside DPW. I just continue to be struck by the fact that we are being asked for a very major increase to these water and sewer rates at the same time that we are just consciously conceding that there is nothing we can do to actually hire locally, to hire in-house union labor to do this work at a lower cost than we would be continuing to pay out-of-city contractors to do. I re-emphasize, this is an incredible cost to pass on to our ratepayers, to our neighbors. And for me, there are two key issues here of why I am going to oppose this rate increase, and I ask you as my colleagues to consider doing the same. One is that regardless of whether or not the administration says, well, we're not really cutting these positions, we're just not going to have them in the budget anymore, but hopefully one day they'll be back. I say I can only go by the public documents we have in front of us and the funding that is explained in our published documents, right? This is the plan going forward. I do not fault our finance director or anybody actually in the water and sewer department for this. They are operating under the reality that they just can't hire for these positions at these wages. I fault the only person who actually negotiates and sets the wages for these positions. That is the mayor. I cannot in good conscience say that that is an okay state of affairs that has persisted for the last 4 years, and in fact, frankly, a lot longer than that, but only to this dire situation over the last 4 years. So that is the first problem I have. The second problem I have is that this incredible failure to actually negotiate good working class wages and do the job in-house is being asked to us to pass that cost along to our neighbors. And I am not going to raise Ms. Halloran's water bill to pay for what I fundamentally believe is an executive failure. By voting to not approve these water increases, it blows, to be fair, something like a $2.5 million hole in this year's water and sewer operating budgets. Basically, a $2.5 million revenue hit. That money will have to be made up somewhere. It will have to come out of a stabilization fund, or it will have to come out of a free cash allocation, or it will have to come out of some goal that the mayor had later on down the road. But it will have to be made up. And it's my hope, because it is the only leverage that I have to influence the situation, that by calling attention to this, both to you, my colleagues, and to the public, and by forcing it to have a realized cost, surfacing this cost, that it will hopefully drive a faster solution to this and a reinvigorated approach to actually doing the maintenance work of the city in-house. So that is my ask. Thank you for allowing me to step you through some very dry spreadsheets, and I appreciate, I'm happy to listen to my colleagues, and hopefully we'll get to a vote before too long.
Thank you, Councilor. I know Councilor Strezzo wishes to speak. We also have the Director of Finance, Stephen Haynes, who can speak on this item as well, answer questions, and provide the perspective from the administration. Let's hear from Councilor Strezzo and then Gomez-Malcad.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will not be supporting these rate increases. I think they will absolutely will cause more displacement, hands down. I think they will further strain low-income residents and families just barely scraping by. When the proposed rates were discussed last November, I stated I would not approve the rates this spring if a plan was not presented in May that ensured that our most vulnerable and, quite frankly, now middle-income residents were not put in peril with this proposed increase. And I appreciate the administration's commitment to create a plan for supplementing overwhelming rate increases, but I did hear that a plan would be manifested next year while our residents are still pummeled between now and the assumed manifestation of that happening next year. But that's not good enough for me. And so I will not support this rate increase. I am voting against it. Colleagues, do what you have to do, but I'm not. I do commend you, Councilor Scott, for this slide. Thank you so much.
Councilor Gomez-Malcad.
First, I want to acknowledge our water and sewer, DPW workers who always are working while we're, cities need to be run, and these are folks who are vital. I also understand right now, if you look out the window, we have a very active construction. Many jobs related to this type of work are out there, can go in the private sector and make more money. That doesn't mean we need to value the work here and invest in these salaries. I thank you for that. The one thing I'm a little confused about, and I need some clarification, it was my understanding that the water and sewer increases were really tied to the Poplar Street station. When we approved the 80 million, was it 80 million? I should, what? 90, thank you. When we approved that, it was very clearly written in that presentation that there was going to be a rate increase, because somehow we have to pay for this, there's going to be some debt service that we have to pay. So I'm a little confused. I want to make sure I understand and I support your stand in terms of trying to, I don't want to get us in a fiscal conundrum of like, if we don't increase the rates now, then it's someone down generations, so we're passing down higher increases down the line. I understand the stance. So is the salaries really tied to the rate increases, or are we trying to make a statement of, I'm not going to increase that until you do something about these salaries? Is that what we're trying to do here?
Councillor Scott.
Thank you for the opportunity to directly respond. Thank you for my colleague for the question. The answer is they all come out of the same budget. They all come out of the same enterprise fund. In my other capacity, people sometimes come in and they say, I want to lose weight. I want to get really good at abs. How do I just lose weight right there? And my answer to them is the same as it is right here, is that you can't dig a hole in a lake. It's all the same water level. So you're right. There is increased costs due to the Poplar Street pump station that we have accepted and understood that they're going to be there. But there's also dramatically increased cost on the operations side that we are paying for contractors to do this work, which is also elevating the level of the lake. So the Poplar Street pump station, absolutely, it's understood. But I think it would be a fallacy to consider that, oh, well, that's just that part over there. I'm just going to lose weight on my abs. So thank you. Hopefully my awful analogy is not too awful.
I think that we should hear from the Director of Finance. Director Haynes, I'll save my thoughts until after we've heard. Please.
Thank you, President. Great conversation JT Scott and I had, or Councilor Scott and I had earlier today. Allow me to offer another perspective. So to clarify, we're not intentionally cutting these positions. These positions are not being cut. What we're doing is we are responsibly redistributing funding to account for actual expenses to match economic instability in the construction landscape that we live in. So with that, as our manning continues to dwindle. So currently we're at 5 out of 24 positions. So out of all of our union positions, we have 5 filled. Historically, we have never filled our Tuesday through Saturday shifts. So our Tuesday through Saturday shifts are 4 SHMEOs, 4 catch basin cleaners, all total to an amount of roughly $235,000 in lag money we have every single year. Approximately $176,000 we have in lag money this year from our Monday through Friday shifts. We anticipate through lag money alone, if we were to have these Tuesday through Saturday shifts, that we would be able to pay for any additional personnel that would be hired from this point forward. Currently, we are awaiting the wage study, as we previously said, from HR to get us help for our personnel issues that we're having. But until then, we still face the issue of our contracts continuing to increase due to construction. Our last contract from TZ was contracted out in 2020, which was right before COVID. All of our contracting items that involve construction have seen over 20% increases across the board. We anticipate that our contract with TZ will be no different. With that said, we are realigning our expenses to match what the reality of the Water and Sewer Department is. Without having this capacity, we cannot respond to any emergencies that happen within water main breaks, any sanitary issues, or distributing quality water to the constituencies of Somerville. Furthermore, we also did Pauper Street Pump Station. It was a $102 million bond authorization, of which we preemptively said that the rate increases would be 17% for water and 20% for sewer, all of which was understood when it was put to the table, which was approved. Once that was approved, we came back with more favorable rates because we feel as though a lot of the federal rate increases that came back from us in March when Ed being in his office, along with delaying the timeline of some of the construction projects, would push off the debt that we would incur in future years. With that said, our debt service is scheduled to double next year, meaning the further on we push these rates, the higher they're going to get in the future. And eventually we will be forced by the DEP and the EPA to do these things. This is inevitable if we keep doing this. As Director Rich Race eloquently put in other very lengthy slideshows, this is absolutely inevitable. So in closing, these changes will allow our department to greater flexibility to respond to Somerville community and further provide pristine water quality and sanitary services for all the community constituents in the city of Somerville. And we believe that it's the most fiscally responsible way to move forward into the future. That's all I have.
So, Director, I just want to ask a couple questions. I was at a conference with other municipal elected officials over the past weekend, and something I heard from a colleague in, I think, Pittsburgh, was they had not raised water rates for whatever it was, 10 years. Understandably, no one wants to do this, and now they're being hit with 50% increases because of what you said, the inevitability. I think one experience as a city councilor is we are often told the sky is going to fall if we don't do X, Y, Z, and frankly, it can be hard to tell when that's real. This situation about the EPA, a consent decree that would force us to raise rates one way or the other, I don't know, for lack of a better question, how real is that threat?
To the President, I would allow to concede to Director Raich to explain on that a little bit further.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we are currently developing the revised long-term control plan for combined sewer overflows. This is an effort that is joint between City of Somerville, City of Cambridge, and the MWRA. This is a plan that will then be reviewed and approved by EPA and DEP. There are a number of advocates that are holding EPA and DEP's feet to the fire on this. There is every expectation that the EPA is going to fully enforce the combined sewer overflow requirements for the Upper Mystic, which includes the Alewife and the Charles for Cambridge. We have every indication from the EPA that they will be using their affordability yardstick, which is a combined water and sewer bill of 4.5% of MHI. That is the standard to which we will have to.
That's median household income?
Median household income, thank you, which in Somerville right now is around $104,000. If you look at where that will put our rates, foreseeably within the 10-year time frame that we're going to have to start making headway on that plan, our rates can quadruple by that time. What we've been doing, foreseeing this almost inevitable position that we're going to find ourselves in, we've been planning our capital plan and planning the debt service that will result from that over the next few decades. And these increases, while they are higher than anything we've seen, are intended to forestall that 400% increase in 2027 or whenever that hits. It's also through the math of compound interest that we're able to build up reserves and then use those reserves to negate the need to debt service all of that. So it is part of a complex plan that we've had to mitigate the overall rate impacts over the next decade. And you know, while you can do the math for this year's operating budget and you know, make it seem as though we could absorb a 0% interest or a 0% rate increase, really that puts us in very bad spot next year in the 5 years following, given that this is a very real sword of Damocles, and it's one that I discussed with my counterparts in Cambridge, and even today I was at MWRA, and we were talking about some of the directions that is going in. This is a very real reality for us in Cambridge and MWRA.
Okay, I see 3 counselors that have questions. I want to ask one more question. There's kind of 2 issues in my mind, right? There is what were to happen if the rate is not increased. That's kind of what I just asked. And then there's the issue of these positions that are in last year's budget and not this year's budget. I want to drill down a little bit on this and kind of my understanding of it. All of us have, you know, been reached out to by SMEA expressing frustration around this. I extremely share that frustration. I very much share the frustration that Councilor Scott raised. What is happening, right? Are these positions being cut? You know, we see that they're not in the budget. It was just represented to us that they are not being cut. I want to ask that, and I want to ask why aren't these being filled?
To the President, great question. The first answer to the question is, we have a significant amount of lag money in our personal services budget. If you were looking at year-to-dates today, we have approximately $800,000 in our personal services budget. That's money that's going to go back into retained earnings for next year. Now, with that said, we anticipate that if these positions were to be filled, and granted, we have 5 positions filled out of 24. So 5 out of 24. Of that, there is 1 SHME or 2 SHMEOs on the sewer side, no SHMEOs on the water side, none whatsoever. There haven't been an SHMEO since, I'd like to say June of last year was the last time we had an SHMEO in those positions. So it's been a full calendar year since we've had one, as alluded to by Councilor Scott. With that said, we have a significant amount of lag money. If we didn't hire a single soul until January, we have enough lag money to fund every position that's there. And that's just strictly by the numbers by week. $18,000 for our Tuesday through Saturday shift, that's weekly, or monthly rather. And then $13,000 of lag money with our Monday through Friday shifts, and that's also monthly. So as those accumulate over time, if we were to hire those positions, let's say the CBA is passed in January, we hire February 15th, that's approximately $72,000 each side if we were to fill just those positions. So Monday through Friday positions. We're looking at approximately, for the rest of that time, $72,000 for that time period, and roughly $142,000. Every single year since I've been here, so 2 years since I've been here, we've sent approximately $1.2 million from water, approximately $3 million from sewer, so I say we have that covered. And I'd be more than happy to reallocate those fundings to provide for those positions that are there.
So Director, just to clarify, because this is obviously a lot of complex stuff.
Absolutely.
If all of these positions from last year's budget were to be hired, this year's budget covers that?
Correct.
Okay. Just one more thing. I also asked, what is going on? We've heard a lot about how hard it is to hire. We've also heard the salary is $51K. I mean, can someone just explain why there are so many vacancies?
So currently we're working with HR. We're also working with the union. We've been in a few meetings with both HR and their administrative team to think of creative ways to create career paths in our own organization to further the development of our staffing. The last time we had SHMEOs, they weren't able to receive the valid qualifications or the licenses that were required to stay in those positions. So they were thusly cut and then hired again within the DPW administration. So with that said, we're looking at removing some of those red tape items and creating those positions, or possibly working with the union to create positions to maybe help that career path in our own organization. But those are things that, like I said, with HR and their collaboration, that we're trying to do something on that end to create that landscape in our department.
Okay, I'm going to cede. I had a bunch of people that I haven't let spoke yet, so, and I believe it was actually probably on the last point. I saw Councilor Klingon, Gomez-Moacad, Kelly, and then Davis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I'm going to say, having executive function issues and tons of thoughts. I'm going to say a bunch of things and probably not make a lot of sense. That's my way of saying that. Ultimately, you know, I voted initially against these increases because I just said it was too much too fast with the new meters going in and the people getting hit with these rates that were these differentials where if you were being charged too much or too little. That was my rationale. The administration came down to a lower number. And that's kind of where I've been at. As far as, I'm not a labor lawyer, so like I don't know that. My question is, and I think it's the same question you had, is the positions aren't in the book, but if you're cutting labor that's then being done by somebody else, I mean, that's not something that's not legal, right? In the sense of like, that has to be, as far as the union's concerned, they can appeal that.
And I'm going to yield this to Director Bean or for his explanation.
Director Gill.
A little bit. Can you repeat the question, please?
So, to disappear positions from the book, does that mean that those positions are in fact gone, seen as though the work has not disappeared? It's going to be done by another entity. But when you're dealing with bargained work, bargained labor, my understanding is that will be appealed by the union if it was an actual elimination of those positions.
Through the chair to, I was going to say professor, to Councilor Klingon.
Yeah.
I worked in higher ed, so I could make her a professor if you'd like. You're right. All decisions regarding wages, working conditions, and impact for jobs has to be bargained with the union, right? We have to go to the table with them. However, it's my understanding that these positions are not being cut, so they're not being eliminated. They are simply, the monies are being sent to another fund to fund what we need to do to get the jobs done. I think I'm characterizing that correctly, Stephen? That's correct. Yeah. So we are not cutting positions. Those positions are not being eliminated because you're absolutely correct. That would create a real rift with the union.
Okay, but I mean, I understand Councilor Scott's point is that it seems a little bit of a shell game. I mean, I suppose you. All right, I'm gonna yield for now. Basically, I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I have to kind of gather them. But ultimately, it sounds to me like we're talking about two different things here, and I understand the reality of the rate increase and how it will impact, kicking the can down the road. I understand that. I am also certainly concerned with the vacancies and the number of vacancies and the fact that we're taking positions out of the book, and it basically looks like privatizing on paper. I don't know, how do we come to an agreement here that is going to, like, if you just didn't take the positions out of the book, and even when we were arguing about these percentages, it was like, what did Councilor Scott say, $2 million? I mean, it seems like we're just really, it seems like we could, I don't know, find that somewhere other than having to make these maneuvers where we're picking fights with the union by taking these jobs off the books. I'm just not comfortable with the way this whole thing is going. And quite frankly, I didn't quite realize that those positions were cut initially in the budget book until Councilor Scott brought it to my attention. And so I'm going to listen to the conversation, but I'm just trying to process this all and figure out where we're talking about holding up these rates and this important money and work that needs to be done versus a lack of sort of trust that these positions will reappear, and also how do we get to a rate, or who says what the rate is that's going to get people to come through the door? You know, we have a labor shortage in every sector all across the city, from after-school program workers to, I mean, everything. And maybe there is a number that would get people lining up. I'd like to get there. I'd like to have these positions staffed. But as I see it, if they're not, the catch basins still need to be clean. So I'm really at an impasse and kind of frustrated here.
Thank you, Councilor Gomez-Mocad.
So I'm trying to wrap. So I'm going to, in Spanish you say you confuse the milk with the magnesium, and I think we have two separate items here. So I am concerned that we went ahead and approved a $90 million to start the Poplar Street, which has started construction, rate hikes. My understanding, we're tied to that. And we have to pay for this project somehow. So I'm hoping I'm understanding that clearly. That's question one.
That is correct.
Okay. The other issue we have here is that we've had these positions we're unable to fill. And the question is, are we unable to fill them because my understanding is it's been 4 years since these contracts have been negotiated. Are the salaries too low? And we need to reconsider that. At the same time, we're in a conundrum because we have to serve our water and sewer, so because we don't have anybody now, and I can tell you this is happening everywhere it happens. I just had a whole discussion internally in one of at my current workplace where they're asking me to hire someone from outside, and I'm like, well, that's a union job, and I can't do that, and all of that. And they have a 25% vacancy in that particular department. So, and I'm trying to find a way in my mind, how can we resolve this? Sorry, so I'm sorry if I'm spewing it out. So we have TZE. We also have the conundrum there that everybody's construction rates are going up exponentially. You said 20%, and this is a reality. I just saw a budget of mine go in 5 quarters go up 20%. It's the rate, you used to do 3%, 6% increases, and we're out of control. So I think what all good counselors want to, I think we voted for the water rate increase back in December when we approved the Poplar Street. I think we saw it was in writing. I wrote to all my constituents saying this is coming, this is why, and I explain. But I think we also want to resolve, we don't feel comfortable, or a lot of counselors don't feel comfortable having an outside company, having union jobs that used to be internal, be hired out. And what we want to find out and understand is, how can we, it's been 4 years of negotiations. Is $59,000 enough? I mean, these are folks, are they machinists technically?
Heavy motor operators, yeah, absolutely.
So my understanding is, knowing from the truckers and stuff I work with, they're like having a hard time. The average age is in the 50s. Nobody is jumping in a truck to do this work. But what attempt can we do to have this, and Councilor Spence is like, we're paying all this money for a consultant, if I understand Councilor Scott's position. What can we do to bring this in? The problem is we have a lag, right? We're not going to hire everybody overnight. So in the meantime, we have to have TZ. But how do we resolve this? And you're saying one of the things you're trying to work out is train people internally to move them up to this position. So that, I think, is the conundrum we're all stuck in here, is that we don't want to be dependent on TZE for the rest of our lives, and I'm being an idealist here, and how we can get these contract negotiations, and I've seen numbers that say some of these, like a salary of $60,000 should really be $90,000. Is that something we can do? Is that something we can consider? I just don't, that's the question I have for the administration, is how we can work this out.
To the President, we're eagerly awaiting the results of the salary compensation study that HR is administering, and that's what we're waiting on.
It's been 4 years that these folks have waited. How long before we get the salary compensation study? Because we're in this revolving door. Sorry.
No, through the President to Councilman McCart. Yeah, the salary study is underway. It's been long and arduous because these projects are long and arduous. We looked at job descriptions, which has never really been done before, which was a good place to start. So the answer to your question, the contract has been a 3-year contract, not a 4-year contract. And so it'll be ending the end of this month. And we're still in negotiations. So even once the salary study is done, we are then still obligated to sit with the union and negotiate the salaries. So it's not that we can just get that information and implement it. We can't do that. Everything we do with the unions has to go to the table, and we have to negotiate with them. So we're still talking about going back and forth about getting those positions raised. But again, to your point, Councilor, this problem in terms of filling positions and recruiting is across the nation. It's not even just Somerville, it's across the nation. And my colleagues are suffering from the same type of issues in hiring a labor workforce. It's just we're an aging workforce. Younger people are looking for other opportunities. And to Director Haynes' point, we do want to have positions, and we're working with the union around this, to have positions that come in at a more entry level and then train them and give them the opportunities to move up into higher positions.
Is there a way, I'm going to be very naive, because this is so special, I know we're talking specifically about this is such a specialized skill set that we could, it's the whole SME, they're negotiating everything, that we can extrapolate this out of the compensation study ahead separately, because it seems so specialized that I would think this, if you try to do the whole thing, it becomes daunting. Is there a way to do that is one question I have. And I think I'm running out of questions because I'm getting myself confused. Sorry.
Well, we have prioritized the union positions, but to your point, can we extrapolate a certain group? We could, however, we're at main table negotiations. So we want to, and they want to, the union wants to, obviously, talk about all their positions as they should. That's their responsibility, is to look out for their entire membership, not just a group. So we're working with them. We're in negotiations with them now. We're in several discussions with them now about a variety of issues. Salary is only one, right? There's lots of things on the table. And for the most part, for anybody who's been involved in negotiations, all the issues on the table involve money. Everything is about money. So we have to look at what can we do and be fiscally responsible and still make sure that we're doing the right thing for our employees. So negotiations it's a back and forth. It's a back and forth, and it's a constant negotiating and talking and coming to some agreements, and that's what we're doing. It would be easy. I would be misleading you if I said we could sit down, say this is what we have to do for salary, and we're done. That just isn't how negotiations work.
And one last question. Do we, I understand there's vacancies everywhere, but particularly for water and sewer, and maybe Councilor Scott, you've done your homework already, how are we comparing to other comparable municipalities around?
That's what we're doing right now. That's what we're doing right now.
And one last question, maybe.
Sure.
Sorry. I'm thinking we're building all this new water and sewer systems, and we want to properly maintain them. And they're going to be very specific to our city, not like Boston or whatever. And that we will want a crew that can maintain these, the capital investment, I think I can relate to Director Rage. For us who work in capital projects, we have the pretty jobs. We make the shiny, beautiful things. Then there's the folks like DPW who have to maintain those things, and that's a lot of hard work, and you want the right people who really care and show up. Sometimes when you have outside folks, sometimes you need the expertise from the outside, but you want the people who care. So I find this a critical issue of how to resolve. I don't know it. I've talked enough, so I'm going to stop. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the folks in the room, I'm trying to follow this conversation, so I just am confirming the positions are not being removed from the personnel table. They're just not being funded for this fiscal year?
Through the chair, correct.
Okay. Which unit in SMEA are these folks primarily in? Are they in Unit A, Unit B?
They're primarily Unit B.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Unit B. When did their contract expire?
June 30th.
Of last year or of this year?
This year.
June 30th of 2023?
Yeah.
The letter from SMEA says the contract...
Fiscal year. Yeah, fiscal year.
Fiscal year.
Yep, sorry.
At what point did you start contract negotiations with these folks?
Let's see, we're in the midst of 10 negotiations with 10 contracts. I don't have the exact date. It's been a while. We've had several conversations, that I can assure you.
But before the contract expired, my guess is that negotiations started?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So we're talking at least 14, 18 months of negotiations with SMEA Unit B on this.
I couldn't, I don't want to quote a date because I really don't know. But it's been a while.
That's an exorbitant amount of time to be out of not only contract, to be negotiating over a contract, just professionally speaking. Obviously, there are ground rules that prevent you from saying what's been going on in negotiations, but do you know how many sessions you've had with SMEA Unit B?
I don't know off the top of my head, no. I don't have that information in front of me.
In my line of work in public education, if my members saw that there was going to be a $1.8 million allocation for work that my members did, I would rightfully call that privatization. I understand that we're in the middle of contract negotiations. I understand that these jobs are difficult to hire for at the current salary rate. I understand that we're in the middle of a wage and compensation study. And we can also look to the state employees who just got an 8% wage increase, right? The state opened up their wages and gave them 8%. This clearly seems like a crisis. I'm trying to go back right now and find the Finance Committee agenda that had the appropriation for TZE, but if I'm remembering it correctly off the top of my head, and the Finance Director for Water and Sewer might be able to remember it more closely, but it was about, what, $600,000? $600,000? And you said there were 24, through the president to the director of finance for water and sewer, there are 24 positions in the water department?
To the president, to the Council Kelly, there are 24 SEBA positions in the water and sewer department, yes.
Right. Just some rough math on that. That $600,000 appropriation, I think we said covered 3 months of work from about January to March?
That's correct.
That's correct. If you divide that number, just simply, I'm not a finance director. I'm not going to act like I'm one, but I am someone who negotiates contracts, and I think about privatization all the damn time. $600,000 divided by 24 folks is about 20 grand each. You're talking about that could be given to those staff folks, or could be added to those positions to keep people in those jobs. I'm not going to act like I'm sitting at your bargaining table and trying to get this deal done, but quite frankly, if we're dropping $600,000 for 3 months of work when there are 19 vacant positions in the water department, the math is just not mathing. It doesn't make sense to me. In going through this budget process, one of the departments mentioned that work had been privatized out in the 2010s, not your department, a prior department, different department. And part of their rationale for why we continue seeing these contracts get upped and upped and up every single year was, well, in 2010, we negotiated these jobs out, we worked collaboratively with the union, and it's all hunky-dory at this point. So when I see a $1.8 million contract for work that should be done in-house, that is costing us an arm and a leg, when we're 12, 14, 18 months into contract negotiations for a unit, I'm just not seeing how this is not privatization. I cannot justify this as somebody who professionally looks at this stuff every day and considers what workers are owed. So, you know, I voted for this. I voted no against this the first time. I voted yes on it the second time, in part, and this is my own fault, because the information wasn't actually up on the budget book for me to review in time. And now I'm looking at this, I'm seeing the cost of the contract, I'm seeing the fact that these jobs are being cut, I'm looking at the last several months of appropriations that we've made and thinking, why the hell are we not just saying, here's a wage reopener, we're putting this money on the table, let's get these jobs hired as soon as humanly possible, and budget for it moving forward. Because quite frankly, 13 years from now, we might be upping a contract that's $10 million. And we're gonna say, well, in fiscal year 24, we said that a $1.8 million contract for privatized work that used to be public sector is worth it. So I recognize that you are in such a bind. I cannot imagine trying to fill 19 positions. But quite frankly, I cannot imagine privatizing this labor in this day and age. I can't.
Councillor Davis, then McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the Director for the answers to the previous questions. I'm just trying to reconcile, like my colleagues, but I think on maybe a slightly different point. And as always, it's entirely possible that I'm just missing something. But so, recognizing that the slides that are on the screen were prepared by Councillor Scott. Okay. So I'm looking at the book for water at the moment, and I'm trying to reconcile what I'm seeing with what's on Councillor Scott's pages and with more specifically with what I'm hearing. And I think that I'm hearing you say that the positions aren't actually being cut. These union positions still exist. We just aren't allocating any money towards them, and we're going to contract with an outside company to do the work. Did I hear that part right?
So that it's partially correct. Okay. So what I'm saying to you is that this contracted work will never cease to end. This contracted work will continue. This is something that we it's just the reality of the department. We have five workers. What we're saying is we have a significant amount of lag that can cover these positions without.
Sorry,
funding
let me stop you there, because
Sure.
That's where you really lose me. And again, very much more likely a me problem than a you problem. So I don't mean to be recognizing my own challenges when it comes to following these. This is just not my area of expertise. The positions either are or are not listed on a table that lists all the positions in the department through the president. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the positions that were in the fiscal year 23 budget, according to the chart that the good councillor from Ward 2 put together, where are those listed in the fiscal year 24 position listing?
Through the president, the positions from Tuesday to Saturday shifts are not funded. They're not listed.
Okay, so I'm more confused now, because I thought I heard you say earlier, and I thought I just heard you confirm that the positions are still listed, but there just isn't money allocated to them. So they're not listed in the budget book?
So to the president, through the president. So they're not currently listed in the personnel listing budget book. However, they are still within our organization allocated for $0.
Where does that list live? Through the president.
Currently, we can make an administrative change to put them there for $0, but they're not on that list currently.
Okay. So the position of the department is that there's a different list that still lists these positions, so the positions still exist. There's not any dollars allocated to them. We're going to hire an outside company to do the work because we need the work to be done. But that said, if 19 folks knock on our door next week and say they want these jobs, we'll be able to, because of the lag, we'll have the money to bring that, to fund those positions, and we'll be able to hire them. Am I getting that part right through the president?
Mr. Chair, can I make a point of personal privilege?
Councillor Scott.
Thank you. On the screen right now is the water page that was just pulled up. This page has been changed since 5 o'clock this afternoon when I stepped through this with Director Haynes. What is on the screen right now is not what was on this, not what was publicly available through the time that we functionally voted on this budget. I am extraordinarily concerned that somebody on our team went through and added these positions back in to change the stark reality of the fact that there were 7 positions on this page earlier today. So I would ask that this be taken off the screen because this is a change which does not reflect reality. It doesn't reflect what was actually publicly posted or publicly available as a record anytime during the budget process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, I'm sure. Now I'm even more confused because I'm assuming what was on the screen before is what I'm looking in the budget book, and I see the 4 positions listed and not what I would have anticipated seeing from what Councilor Scott, what the good councilor from Ward 2 described, which would have been lots of other SHMEO positions with a 0 next to them. So now I'm confused as to what's wrong about what we were just looking at. I got to be honest, I can't follow any of this. It's not clear to me whether these positions are listed on a super secret list, whether the list right now that's here now is a new list that doesn't reflect what was there before, because I think I'm hearing, if that were the case, I would assume I would be seeing the positions with $0 next to them, but there's none here. If somebody can explain to me, I guess I'll just go back to the sort of high-level conceptual clarity that the good councilor at large articulated prior to my trying to wade through and sort out this mess and failing miserably. There are positions on a list somewhere that either are or not actually on an official list that in either case we're told are not being funded this year. My understanding from other conversations is that we can't post a position that isn't, for which there's not funding allocated. So I'm not sure how the 19 people that knock on the door next week are going to apply for any job until there's money allocated to it. Presumably that would be a mid-year appropriation, I guess, because of the lag, I'm assuming. But right now, as Councilor Kelly said, it sounds like we're taking a bunch of union positions, putting them on a super secret list, not putting money towards them, and hiring an outside private party to do the work. How is that not what we're doing? Through you to the good director.
To the president. So what I would like to remind the councilors is we have currently 5 positions filled in our SMEA positions, 5, and we've filled 4 in the past 4 years. Our current landscape, how it seems, thus with the $600,000 appropriation, we are currently spending in excess of $2.8 to $3.2 million on contract actions. This is the reality of the construction company that is the Water and Sewer Department. And what we're doing is we're being more fiscally responsible with our money, understanding that that's what we're doing. That's the landscape that we live in. And that's the direction that that is the direction that our contracts are headed with the hiring landscape that we are in. So we could list those positions, but we still have the perspective of we have 5 employees. We cannot do this work in-house. We have to sub it out. There's no other alternative. It's going to have to be done.
Counselor, can I step in for 1 sec with a follow-up on this point? I think there's a big picture policy conversation about the reality in the department. I don't foresee a reality in which this council possibly supports this if they're not listed as in a conversation this afternoon, and I think it was represented multiple times in this, the positions have to exist in order to be filled, period. I'm not going to speak for other councils. I don't know where folks are at if they're at $0, but they have to exist as positions that union members can get. How does that happen?
Mr. President, Mike Mastromoney, Budget Director again. Jumped up to give a little context, but in answer to your question, the water and sewer departments would, I think, seek to fill the Monday through Friday? The Monday through Friday crews first before filling the Tuesday through Saturday crews, which to my understanding are the ones that have been, we could call it unfunded within this budget. With your indulgence, I just wanted to give just a touch of context. Counselors that, actually, I'm wondering how many counselors have been here. Some counselors will remember Water and Sewer Director John DeLuca and Alex Lesson, Finance Director, created these positions, I think approximately 4 or 5 years ago. And what the positions I'm referring to are the Tuesday through Saturday crew. The conversations we had at that time, by we, I mean the Water and Sewer Department with the council, was that our goal as a city, as a Water and Sewer Department, is to bring work in-house. It was recognized many years ago that the model of us being a pass-through, our Water and Sewer Division being a pass-through of the MWRA and contractors is not the best model for a Water and Sewer Department to work. I think that was recognized. This Tuesday through Saturday crew, sorry, I'm doing my best here. This Tuesday through Saturday crew was created at that time with then Director DeLuca. I hesitate to use this word, but aspirationally looking to build out a second crew to do additional work that was not done by the Somerville Water and Sewer Department at that time. That feels like ancient history at this point, and maybe only somewhat related to the conversation. I do think it's important to remind the council that this is not work that the Water and Sewer Department has always done. This Tuesday through Saturday crew that has been identified as being unfunded here. These were created to staff up further to do more work in-house. And again, that may or may not affect the conversation. I understand that. The result, just to close the loop, the result of this budget is Finance Director Haynes and Water and Sewer Director Fidalis are simply creating a budget that shows what fiscal year 24 looks like in an effort to raise rates as little as possible. I hope that's helpful. I know, like I said, that feels like ancient history a long time ago when this crew was created. But the intent was then and has always been to staff this up. We very much absolutely agree with you that the wage and compensation study is critical to more than any other department in the city of Somerville, water and sewer. It is extremely difficult to hire folks. It's extremely difficult. It's even more difficult to hire folks when we are still collectively bargaining and trying to resolve issues in pay. So hopefully that's helpful. Sorry if that made things worse, but I did want to share that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for yielding, Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just a quick clarification there through the President to the Budget Director. Acknowledging that it may or may not inform our thinking, just for objective understanding, well, I won't put words in your mouth. Were those, that other shift, the Tuesday, Saturday shift, were those positions ever filled, or are you saying that they were created but never filled, and I'll stop there.
Mr. President, that's exactly what I'm saying. They were created, and like I said, aspirationally is a strong word. It's a silly word, but with the intent to fill. I don't believe they were ever filled, this Tuesday through Saturday positions. This has been an ongoing.
Head nodding with Director. Okay.
No further questions at the moment, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay, we have Councilor McLaughlin hasn't spoken, then Councilor Wilson hasn't spoken. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've never been more happy to hear such confusion, so many flip-flopping votes on this issue, because I don't know what to make of this, and I am undecided on, I'm usually very sure of every vote I take, and I really don't know what to think about this. And that was before all this new information. Before this new information was provided to us, I still had concerns. Let me say, so I'm going to walk through my thought process, because it helps me, occasionally helps other people. The reason this doesn't make any sense is because it doesn't make any sense. And the positions are going away, they're being replaced by contract work, they're not coming back. That is what it sounds like to me. I don't support that in any way. Let me put a pin in that and go to what we're here talking about right now, which is rate increases for water and sewer. Because I don't believe, even with these numbers, even with savings, that it's going to eliminate the need for the work that needs to be done and the money that needs to be spent. Maybe it saves some money, but it's not going to prevent this from being expensive. And that's the reality we're living in right now, is we're voting on a water and sewer rate increase. We have to decide whether that's deserving or not. So the issue I have is there are two realities to me. There's the fact that this work needs to get done, and it's going to be expensive, and there's the fact that a lot of people can't afford it in the city. And these are two difficult decisions we have to make. You know, a lot of longtime homeowners can't afford this, and then there's a lot of renters who aren't even aware of this because their large property owners don't show up to the public hearing and say, please don't raise my rate, my water and sewer rate, because they're just going to raise it on the renters. So we know there's vast swaths of people who are completely unaware that this is ever going to impact them. And it is, every cost we have in the city does eventually trickle down to the people who can't afford it the most. So with this in mind, I called Rich Raish, and thinking, you know, Rich is always great at talking me off ledges and making rational decisions. And I asked him, like, you know, what I hear from my constituents all the time is we have more money than we've ever had in the history of the city. Why do my taxes keep going up? Why does my water and sewer rate keep going up? Like, why is it if we have all these funds that the rates keep increasing? And I said, isn't it an issue about money that is being allocated? The fact that our government keeps expanding, couldn't money be used from other programs to fund water and sewer? I won't put words in his mouth, but he did not disagree with me, which only made me more confused and more troubled, because I thought at least I'd be talked off the ledge. The reality is we have finite resources here. We have a budget, we have set tax rates, we got a Prop 2.5, we got water and sewer rates, all these different things. And I don't think there's any internal hires that are going to make this less expensive. Maybe it makes it a little less expensive, but we're talking about percentages of a water and sewer rate that I also don't see in the spreadsheet. You know, supplies, equipment, the gear, the things needed to actually make this water and sewer work happen. And we have I don't think there's any tax credit we can give to seniors and low-income people, because we already have programs like that. Very few people even take advantage of it. So that's not going to go anywhere. And there's no real, we have a choice in my mind, and I also don't think that this council will ever agree, or any council for that matter, will agree to make enough cuts in the general funds to actually offset the water and sewer rate, because it's just never happened. Every year we go through the budget, except for this year actually, every year but this one, we go through the budget, we debate items about what should be cut and what shouldn't be cut. I think at the most we've cut $1 million from a budget at one point. But there's a lot of programs people care about, and I make make a cut to a program someone cares about, 6 other people disagree, that stays in the budget, someone else makes a cut, that doesn't pass through because it's a balancing act of priorities. It's like, do we want all these social programs that are going to help people, or do we want to keep water and sewer rates low to make sure that people can actually afford to live in the city? So to me, that's the real choice we're talking about. I want to be clear, like, I want these positions filled, and I want in-house union labor to do it. I think at the end of the day, we're still voting on a water and sewer increase rate, and if I vote no, it's going to be because I think people can't afford it, and we should find other funds in the city to make this happen. If I vote yes, it's not to say that I'm not going to vote no next year, because I think that this is a problem that's not going to go away. And to say just this balance and act, moving money, we have finite resources. How are we going to spend this money? So I hope that makes sense to people and people view it from that lens, because like that's what we're discussing tonight.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. We saw in last year's water and sewer rates presentation what the impact would be if we didn't raise rates substantially. I don't want to get this wrong. The figure in my head was if we stayed at fairly small single-digit increases, there'd be some 25% annual increases coming our way down the road. And then we approved the Poplar Street pump station after that. So we all knew this was coming. We all were well aware. Rates need to go up. They need to go up substantially for 4 years, this being year 2 of that, to pay for the necessary improvements we're finally doing here to our water and sewer infrastructure. What we're really talking about here is the idea of holding hostage this rate increase to try to force what we want, try to get these positions filled. It's an interesting tactic. I get why it would appeal to people. I want to see these filled too. The problem is I question whether it would accomplish what we actually want. You know, we've heard about the compensation study, we've heard about the collective bargaining happening, we've heard about the creative thinking that's happening with the qualifications and training for these positions. We've heard that rejecting these rate increases would chew up funds that planned for use on other things. We've heard it would result in an absolutely massive increase either next year, some point in the future. Anyone who understands time and rates with money can tell you how much sticker shock would be involved just because of what happens. Next year's 11% raise or whatever, that's built on top of this year's. So we're talking about numbers that are going to get staggering pretty quickly. So and then we heard it could potentially result in a consent decree. So I'm just really leery of taking up a strategy that I don't see having the impact we're hoping, that would result in us putting us in a major hole in terms of future rates. So I will say I expect the administration to prioritize getting these positions filled by increasing compensation as soon as they are able to. Compensation study, collective bargaining. I'm assuming they understand here that this is not a good long-term strategy of paying much more for outsourced work, and that they're on board with trying to get these positions filled. Thanks.
Thank you. So we have on round 2, Councillor Scott, Councillor Klingon. I want to share where I'm at. It's been made explicit that the point of this vote is to put pressure on the mayor to hire these positions by keeping them in the budget and keeping them funded. I extremely support that end. As Councillor Wilson said, I don't think that this gets us there at all, and I think that this has extremely negative effects on the city, on future city councils. These positions have been fully funded in the budget for the last 3-4 years. That has not led to them being filled. That has not even led to the Monday to Friday shift being filled. That is not something I'm happy about. I'm not happy to be sitting here browbeating to raise water rate. I mean, I don't want to take this vote at all. I mean, this completely sucks. I just think that this would be an irresponsible vote for me to take to refuse to raise water rates on an issue that it's not going to have that effect. I take seriously the EPA threat. I take seriously the fact, I don't think like mayors of the world are racing to propose large increases out of pleasure. No one wants to do this. It's a reality that we have based on the decisions that we have collectively made. That's where I'm at. I mean, I share the underlying frustration. This is setting myself up to look like an idiot if I'm proved wrong in a year and these, actually they just haven't been done. Okay, but that's where I'm at on this. Councilor Scott, Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two questions. Let me start. One question for right now to Director Gill, through you, if you wouldn't mind, which is this change to outsource this work. Was that notified to SMEA as a need to impact bargain that? Was there notification made?
Well, there hasn't been any impact to the union because it has not impacted jobs. There are no jobs there, right? So there are no positions that are being eliminated. SME is well aware of the shortage of staff across the board, across all positions, but particularly water and sewer. So they're fully aware that work is being outsourced. They're not happy with it, nor are we, but they know that we've never, ever said at the administration or to anyone else that we intend to eliminate positions. That was not the intent of this. I think really, truly the bottom line is the work needs to be done. I think we can all agree to that. There are no people to do it. There are no people to do it. So I think Director Haynes and Director Vidalis are trying to do the best they can with the reality that they're faced with, and that we have no intention of eliminating positions. We're constantly searching for those positions to fill them. We have recruiters who are working day and night to get positions filled. We're working with the team at Water and Sewer. So it isn't that there's a lack of effort to get these positions filled or an effort to eliminate any positions. That has not been on the table, has never been discussed with administration, nor with the union.
I think your question was answered.
There was a lot of words to say no. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have a second question which related to my point of privilege earlier. When was this position listing changed on the Water Enterprise page?
I didn't hear, I'm sorry, is that question for me?
It's not to you. It's not
for me, okay.
It's to the Deputy Director, or it's the Director of Budget, who I presume maintains these pages.
Through the President, to Councilor Scott, it was directly right after our conversation, which I alluded to. Some administrative changes need to be had because there were some mistakes in there that you alluded to.
And yet, now there are many, many positions appearing here. Again, this is, sir, part of my concern is that we live in a world now without a PDF that the facts can be changed at a moment's notice, even retroactively. It is incredibly frustrating. And again, maybe outside of the scope of tonight's discussion, but I want to relay how disturbed I am continually about our very malleable reality of this non-PDF budget book. So thank you very much for that, Director Haynes. I appreciate all the conversation tonight. I appreciate the digression into the EPA and the DEP and the catastrophizing. Respectfully, that has nothing to do with us failing to hire internally, failing to set wages properly to fill these positions, and committing to a long-term contract outsourcing our catch basin cleaning. This is pretty analogous to what we did when we privatized the city's garbage collection and recycling collection, except then it was to save money. This is privatizing it to cost us more money. There's a lot of, I hear a lot of we're closer to hiring. We're just a few months away from a wage study. We're just a few months away. This is a problem that has persisted for 4 years. This is a problem that has persisted under the current administration for a year and a half. At any point, this could have been addressed more aggressively. I appreciate my colleague from Ward 5 just asking, what can we do to resolve this? And ultimately, I don't think it's the council's job to propose and find those solutions. It is the mayor's job to find it. So I appreciate the incredulity of some of my colleagues at the idea that we're not cutting these positions. We're just hiring them at $0 now. I find that argument to be ridiculous. And frankly, I am grateful to my colleague from Ward 1 for bringing up that this money has to come from somewhere. And appreciate the reflection from some of my colleagues that we have more money in this city than ever before. We had $39 million in free cash, and we have just approved over the last month tons of sweeping transactions to just shove monies from that free cash into buckets to be used for something someday, maybe. That's a fine place to get this money from. It is a fine way, I believe. And as a city councilor, this is the only place, the voting yes or no on a rate increase is the only place that I can influence our mayor and the decision-making around what to do in the water and sewer department. So I'm taking the vote because I do not want to pass the cost along to my constituents. I cannot look them in the face and tell them that, yes, I voted to raise your rates so that a contractor in Medford can get all this money. I cannot look them in the face and tell them I'm raising their rates as maintenance across the city, and this is not just water and sewer, continues to falter. And I'm voting no on this rate increase because it is literally the only thing that I can do to influence a change of course out of the mayor. I want to reiterate, this is not Director Haynes' fault. This is not anybody in water and sewer's fault. They are not the ones at the bargaining table with this union. So I love y'all, but I have a hard time. I have a hard time expressing this. Thank you for your forbearance, sir, and I'm all set.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, Councilor Gomez-Mocad asked the question. I know that they're waiting on a disparity pay study or whatever, but I am curious if anybody has an idea as to what a similar position gets paid in, say, Cambridge or Everett. Does anybody know what a similar position gets paid?
To my knowledge, we're waiting on the study to reveal that information through the president.
Okay, so the more I listen to this conversation, the more frustrated I get, because I think about, I was on my union's bargaining committee for the state, and this administration, I thought things would be different in terms of like how quickly and things were able to move around bargaining and in good faith. And the state, just like the Social Security Administration, recognized inflation. They just got an 8% increase. The state, many unions that the state has to bargain with got an 8% increase for a one-year contract to regain some of that ground. I'm just not hearing that there is bargaining happening in good faith, and I feel like as time goes on, our workers in the city are losing ground on waiting for a study, and then like other people are getting raises. The idea that, like, I agree with Councilor Kelly that, $600,000, if you could bump those up by $20,000 tomorrow, which seems like it would, I guess, philosophically, to the city seems like it would be like a giveaway. They rather like that it has to go to the table and be sort of like clawed and, fought for, when we could actually just have an impact on getting these positions filled by just bringing them up to scale, by just looking at another city, next door, here or there. On top of that, as Councilor McLaughlin said and Councilor Serzo said, I have a hard time with these rate increases. It amounts to a lot in the pocket of the ratepayer, but I think Councilor Scott can get the numbers right to me, but I think we're sort of trying to extract out about $2 million with these rate increases, $2.4 million, and it just seems like we'll throw that at something else, like it's breaking sticks, and like yet we, want to pass these rates on to the basically the renters like myself and the ratepayers. And again, I think at this point, I know I agreed to the agreed upon, the lower rates that the administration came to, but at this point, I think it's time to send a message that they need to get to the table and bargain in good faith. And I think I'm going to vote, I'm going to support the motion to reject these water rates. Thank you.
Councillor Burnley.
Can I go after Councillor Kelly and then immediately go?
Burnley yields.
Thank you through the President to the Director of Finance. Just a couple of clarifying questions. So thank you, Director Mastroboni, for clarifying that these positions have been unfilled for the last 4 years. That was helpful information that I did not have. And I hope that we will reach an agreement sometime soon and have these contracts completed. We're talking about now inching towards a 1 and probably a 3-year deal as we get closer and closer and closer to reaching that 1-year expiration date of this contract. So Director Haynes, just a clarifying question for you. Now, I understand the positions are still in the organizational chart. They're not funded for the fiscal year. That information ascertained. So you keep using this phrase lag money, and I think for both the council and the public it might be helpful to acknowledge that the water and sewer enterprise funds, they're separate from the general fund budget, so you don't go through the same process that, let's say, I see the CAO in the room. If the CAO decides mid-year she wants a supplemental appropriation for a deputy CAO, it has to come back to the council and ask for those appropriations. Now, since the water and sewer enterprise funds are separate from the general fund budget, and given this lag money, if you had a Monday to Friday position, person apply for an unfilled position, would you be able to appropriate that money without coming to the council, or would you need to come to the council for approval of that appropriation?
Through the President. So transfers inside of the prime account that can be done within the department without the approval of the council.
Thank you for that information. So I wanted to clarify that if somebody shows up tomorrow, they're qualified, they want the job, you would be able to independently make that choice without needing to slow down the process, come to the council, and ask for that appropriation.
That is correct.
Okay. I see Director Mastroboni standing up.
To Director Mastroboni, eloquently put, Monday through Friday comes first, but Tuesday through Saturday would be subsequent of Monday through Friday. So we have 4 openings for Monday through Friday on the water side, 2 openings for Monday through Friday on the sewer side. We would fill those positions first, and then Tuesday through Saturday, of which we historically, for the past 4 years, going into 5, have not.
Got it. So the Monday through Friday, we have had those positions filled. The Tuesday to Saturday are the positions that were created 4 years ago and that have remained unfilled since. Okay. This is helpful. I feel like the word of the night is confused, but this is definitely some clarity. I think Councillor McLaughlin described it as flip-flopping. I'm going to describe it as being flexible when information comes in. I'm curious if any of my colleagues have any final comments. I'm really struggling with this issue. To me, again, it does feel like privatization, even though we have now gained some information around some of these jobs that existed before and some of these jobs did not exist before. But quite frankly, if I was putting my professional hat on and if I was in a different community, I would be saying to an elected body like this, help. We need your help. We need either management to come back to the table and negotiate in good faith, or we need these positions to be prioritized and filled. So I'm struggling. I appreciate what Councillor Ewenkampen said about the kind of catastrophe that could potentially happen if we don't approve these waters and sewer rates, but I'm also seeing the frontline workers who are being impacted by this and our most vulnerable residents who can't necessarily afford the rate increase. So I'm going to sit tight. I vote later than all of you on that side. But I appreciate the conversation that we've had tonight, and I appreciate you struggling with us on this issue.
Councillor Burnley.
Thank you. As the only councillor, or maybe one of the few councillors who haven't spoken on this issue, I'd like to call the question.
Can you remind me, does that need a majority?
Yes, if anyone objects, we can take a vote on it, yes.
There's another hand up. And I physically need a recess before we vote, I'm sorry to say. So I do not want to vote just yet. I do want to wrap this up shortly. Councilor Gomez-Moacad, then Davis and McLaughlin. Okay, who would like to call the question? Say aye.
On the motion for the previous question, do you want to take the vote on this item right now with no further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Mr. President, we have rules, and there's a process for when a motion for the previous question has been made. Any opposition to that motion is, the only debate is, the only people that can speak to that motion, and Madam Clerk, please, are folks who are in opposition to that motion. I would like to speak in opposition to that motion. Of course, the maker of the motion could at any point withdraw the motion, and then we could continue the debate. But if we're going to continue, then I would certainly like to speak in opposition. I oppose the motion. This is an important issue. I think we're all struggling, and I think that it's frankly, and I mean this with as much respect as possible, disrespectful to ask us to stop before we have had an opportunity to finish our conversation about this. This is one of the most complex votes that we've taken in recent years, just because of the scenario involved, whether the position still exists with no dollars, whether they don't. I mean, there are legal questions here that no one in this room can answer, and we need to struggle with what impact the vote would actually have on this related but to some degree unrelated question. So I want to hear as much debate, I mean, within reason. In my opinion, we've not reached the point where this debate is unreasonable, and I strongly oppose the motion to end debate.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Councilor McLaughlin?
Mr. Chair, I oppose the motion as well because I just got something real quick I want to say.
Would you like to withdraw?
Yes, with the addendum that the reason I put forward the motion is because I've listened to the conversation. It feels like it is circular, and it feels like not much information is being gleaned, no additional information beyond the first. I don't know. I don't want to put a timestamp on it. I feel fairly firm on where I'm at on this point. I'm happy for others to speak, and I'm happy for us to take a recess before the vote as well.
A point of order, Mr. President, if the good councilor at large is not speaking in opposition to the motion, then
I'm speaking towards withdrawing the motion. I would like to withdraw the motion. That was the first thing I said. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilors wishing to speak on this before a recess? Councilor McLaughlin, did you want to say something? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Councilor Davis.
I'm happy to have the recess first, too.
I'll just be real quick, Mr. Chair, just because I want to clarify my flip-flopping comment, not an insult to anyone, because I am conflicted as well. But I do want to just restate one thing that I feel like we're talking about two different things. We're talking about union issues that need to be resolved, and we're talking about a water and sewer rate. You can't make water into wine. There's no such thing as miracles. You can't pull a magic hat out of it. This is money that needs to be spent for water and sewer. In my mind, the solution is to take money from somewhere else. That might mean someone's job. That might mean a union person's job. That might mean a program that we all care about. So that's what I'm talking about. And I feel like that's the only realistic solution that the public should be aware of. And that's a very tough decision to make. And I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong for their decision on that. But I do agree with a few of my colleagues that I don't think voting down the water rate is going to lead them to hire 7 new positions or anything like that. It's going to lead them to have to try to find more money somewhere else, which is kind of what I'd like to see, but I'm also not a gambler either, so we'll see what happens.
Councilor Gomez-Moacad.
I'm going to speak a little bit about water, and we talk about water increases, and I want to remind everyone we're a country of low taxation and terrible infrastructure. One of the reasons we're here today is that our state and federal agencies don't really invest in our infrastructure. And then the buck is passed to our constituents. So that's the horrible dilemma here. The other issue we have is that we have to remember water is a resource that's not finite like any other. We're polluting our waters right now, our rivers, our brooks, etc. And we're trying to correct this because we haven't built infrastructure for 100 years. Let us be reminded of when we don't invest in our infrastructure, what happens, and look outside the window at our roadways, look at our trains, everything. So I think we need to invest. It comes as a cost. And again, I want to commend Councilor McLaughlin, Councilor Van Nuynkamp, Councilor Wilson. We have two items here. One is the labor issue, and one is simply we got to spend money in our infrastructure, and it's reflected in our water sewer rates. Why are they so high? Well, we need to think water is a finite resource, and we should use less of it, you know. I'll tell my daughter to take 1-minute showers instead of 30. But on the other hand, we have this labor issue, and we've supported so many unions outside of the city. It is time, I'm thinking there's a way we can do the same support we supported unions outside of the city to advocate for them and speak for them. So I think we all are in relation. We want these jobs to stay here. And I think we're going to have to be really creative about how we promote filling these positions, because what I'm hearing out there is that there's not, and maybe I'm completely wrong and I'm not the expert, but there's not that much of that type of labor out there, and we need to value more and more. And I want to speak up for the person who's right now out there picking up our trash, taking care of our buildings in the middle of the night where we're all sleeping. Those are very valuable jobs that make our cities run, and we should value them, and we should compensate them accordingly. You know, we look at the Steve Jobs, we look at the Teslas, all of that, and we think they're great, and we forgot the people who always help us run the city. And we have to value that, and we have to compensate them. And whatever, I defer to the expertise from my fellows who work in unions of how we can, you know, support the SMEA in whatever shape or form. But we can't forget this is a piece of infrastructure that needs investment, and we voted on this to support a $90 million bond, and we need to pay it somehow. We can't call Daddy Warbucks to pay it for us. It's going to have to come out of our pockets, and the unfortunate issue is that everything we do in our city gets paid by our residents almost, because 70% of our income comes from our property taxes. If you go to Germany, the cities only pay locally 10%. You know, that's the harsh reality we have, unfortunately. It would be a huge system change, and I hope the next generations figure it out. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to call a 10-minute recess. We're in recess. I'll call this meeting back to order.
Doing great.
So folks, I think councilors are still deliberating and thinking. I want to just start something that came up earlier and I want to close the loop on. There's this question about whether the positions are in the book with a zero figure next to them. Director, is it any problem to put these positions in the book with zero so that there is no ambiguity that if and when these positions are able to be hired, there is a place for them, there is no kind of legal, we're not accidentally creating a legal situation where these positions no longer exist. Is that an issue for this to be memorialized in the final budget book?
To the President, there's no issue at all. We can absolutely do that.
So we could do that, okay. I have no clue if that is, compelling to my colleagues. I'll just say that city councils in the past have refused to pass a rate increase many times in recent history, and I imagine before our record started, and in my opinion, that's one of the big issues that's gotten us into the situation we're in now. So I continue to think that this is not a vote I enjoy taking, but I think that we have to, and I'm curious to hear where colleagues are at, because we are certainly getting towards a vote. Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for clarifying. That was going to be one of the first questions I asked, is like, can we just have the full list somewhere? I do remember in reflecting that in past budgets, there's not everything is reflected in the budget book because this is what the general fund pays for, or in this case, the water sewer fund pays for. And so, this has been explained to previous councils or boards. But particularly given this scenario, thank you. It would be, I think, helpful for everyone to see in pixels that these positions still exist. That doesn't change the fact that we're still going to go and hire an outside company to do the work, but it sounds, as you said, this isn't work that we have been doing because these positions have never been filled since they were created. I still don't like a lot about this. I think what I keep coming back to, and the good president just pretty much hit the nail on the head. I'll take it to a related issue, and the good councilor from Ward 5 touched upon this a little bit earlier and has touched upon it in very meaningful ways over the past few weeks. Other ways that prior administrations and prior councils have kicked the can down the road have just been underfunding, as the good council from Ward 5 said, all sorts of infrastructure, and our school buildings, for example. And we saw very clearly what happens when you do that at the beginning of this month. We've had in the past sinkholes and partial collapses of the sewer systems. That costs more money than it does to fix the issues ahead of time. I hate that we're in this position. I hate that we're constrained by the state budgeting process and our nation's approach to so many things. And I hate that I sat here and cheered the reallocation of these $200,000 as a triumph of collaboration, when I just didn't think to say, but not that there's probably too many strings that would have needed to be pulled or buttons that would need to be pushed to move this money into in order to reduce the rate increases. I don't know. Maybe there is a way to do it, but. The money has to come from somewhere. It's going to come from our taxpayers one way or another, whether that's through money that they would have otherwise paid for different programs this year, next year, down the road. I don't see a way around this really, 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 really lousy situation and lousy vote. If there is one, I'll be thrilled to hear it, but I just. This stuff's 200 years old and it's breaking and it's collapsing and it's more expensive to fix when that happens, and we've got to fix it. And in the meantime, we're pumping raw sewage into our rivers and streams, and we've got to stop doing that. So that's where I regretfully land on this, I guess.
No one else talks, we got to vote. Councilor Klingon, then McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, third and final time speaking on this. This is the flop to my flip. You know, I hope my message was received in terms of the administration taking seriously this these contracts with our unions. I just keep coming back to what Councilor McLaughlin is saying about the money will come from somewhere, and I worry as to where that money will come from. And you know, we have no idea. It could be some of the things we just talked about this evening. And if they're going to put them in the budget book, that definitely does change things a little bit. But I really can't emphasize enough that if this administration isn't going to get to the bargaining table and bargain in good faith with these unions and get a contract settled, we're going to have to figure out another route. I don't know that this is it at this time. Again, seen as though people will suffer. I mean, as much as it seems like $2.5 million, like I said, we allocate over here, over there. It could be significant enough that it would really do some damage on some of the programs that we also value and find important. So I'm going to support the lower rate that we already had negotiated with the administration. As I had stated before, I thought that was a little too steep of an increase, and so I will be not supporting this motion.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm voting yes on the rate increase, which I hate. If it was 2 weeks ago, I'd be voting no. But it's the day of the budget, the final meeting, second to last meeting of the year. Consequences to not voting in favor of it are weighing on me. Sword of Damocles, for those of you who go back, watch like 10 years of council meetings talking about that. And again, this isn't an empty threat. I'm voting yes now. I may not vote yes next year. And I think that this is about where does the money come from? And I hope this council takes that seriously, because there's a lot of priorities we all care about that may be in jeopardy if we want to keep water rates low and keep the water flowing, literally keep the water flowing. And that's the situation we're in. The buck stops with the mayor. She has all the power to make the budget, decide what goes and what doesn't. We can make cuts, but I've never seen us get anywhere close to the cuts necessary to address this issue. So for here right now, I'm voting yes, and I'm just really hoping that this council and the mayor and a lot of people take this very seriously, because I do believe we have at times in a very wealthy city been cavalier about our spending, and that it does trickle down and hurt people. So that's my issue. The union issue is also very important to me, but I don't see them as the same thing in this situation right now. So I'm voting yes.
I would say if the administration doesn't take from this that this is a serious issue for the council, they should see a doctor. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right. Oh, sorry. Councilor Gomez.
I just, in terms of the union issue and the rates, I just hope when we're in negotiations, and for everyone listening, our cities are run by not only the staff in these offices, but the crews out there on the streets. Without them, we wouldn't have our cities. We're becoming a more demanding population of services that our cities provide, and I think the folks who are out there doing the job, whether we think they're extremely important, and I hope we value them. I say this across the entire nation, that things run, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of work, and we have to value it as much as, you know, the neurosurgeons out there, because so I just wanted to say that. And
all right.
You want to roll call it?
Yes, please.
So on the item, which is item 23-0550, the Director of Water and Sewer conveying the fiscal year 2024 water and sewer rate proposal. Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Scott.
Nope.
Counselor Strezzo.
No.
Counselor Klingon.
Yes.
Counselor Wilson.
Yes.
Counselor Burnley.
Nay.
Counselor Gomez-Mulcad.
Yes.
Counselor Kelly.
No.
Counselor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Counselor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 7 counselors in favor and 4 opposed, that item is approved.
Thank you. I don't think this needs to be said, right, but a lot of counselors have gone out on a limb in support of these negotiations being successful. I would imagine that there will be quite a bit of frustration if that does not happen. So, message conveyed. Thank you all. Meeting adjourned. No, just kidding. We have a significant amount
Mr.
of the
President,
agenda
we also
left.
have item 10.1 before the council to place on file.
Yes. Yes.
And that will return us to the regular order of business and item 6K, a report of the Committee on Licenses and Permits, meeting on June 12th, 2023.
Councilor Burnley.
Now I finally get to talk. All right, through the chair. Thank you on. Why are you looking at me? And everybody leaves. On June 12th, the committee for. I'm going to get to you. The Committee for Licenses and Permits met. I would like to immediately thank, with no reservations, my colleague from Ward 4 for holding down the meeting for me as I tried to speak at the Juneteenth event. Because of that, there were a number of items that I was absent for here that I am happy to yield to the Councilor from Ward 4 to speak to. But the committee met for, I don't know, because I was not there. But we got to a number of items, most of which were President in Ward 2 and our good colleague, Councilor Scott, was there to speak to a number of issues having to do with licensees within Union Square. Unfortunately, a number of which did not appear before this council, despite being reached out to by the city of Somerville. As a result of that, there were at least 3 items that remain in committee until those applicants can come before us and convey their intentions. Aside from those, most of these items were brought forward. They were, quite, mundane things beyond at least one item that we did get a bit of pushback from the community. There is some, there's a communication on this agenda about it, and that is specifically a 7,000 gallon new flammable tank that is not actually new, if I'm understanding it correctly. It is actually just changing hands from one applicant to the next. But there was some concern about the, not the safety of the tank itself, but the overall safety of the space in our community and the intersection near it. But most of these items were moved forward with a good deal of haste and a good deal of cooperation from our councilor from Ward 2. And I'd like to yield also to my colleague from Ward 4 before asking that this committee report be accepted.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, so there was 5 public hearings, 3 of which were all related to one particular location. The reason why I want to speak about it is because the location in question, where there was a few residents that spoke at the public hearing regarding somewhat of an opposition to the use of the particular licenses at that location, which really wasn't in our purview to decide as to whether or not it's a good location for a car dealership or whatnot. And just to explain a little further, and I wanted to, because I hadn't got a chance to speak to Councilor Pineda-Neufeld about this particular location, is the old Simon's gas station on Boston Ave and Mystic Valley Parkway, which is currently permitted for a gas station auto repair place and a used car, up to 28 cars. It's now going to be John's Auto Sales has bought Simon's, and they are planning on utilizing the garage, the automotive fixing part and the used car part, but not the gas station part. So hence the 18,000 gallon drop to 7,000 gallon of storage fuel, mainly to maintain probably whatever vehicles they have or whatnot. So so I did explain to the public that we weren't able to rule on whether or not there was a good business plan, that location was good. It was simply just a switch over of permits, and everything was on the up and up, and lawful. It was just no change of use. So I just wanted to let the counselor know that, and yeah, everything else was kosher and, you know, approved, and yeah, so thanks. And then Counselor Burnley showed up, and he handled it like a rock star. Thank you.
So everything was kosher and he handled it like a rock star? Okay, great. Thank you. That committee report is accepted. Thank you.
The next item is item 7.1, a request of the mayor requesting ordainment of an amendment to sections 2-322 and 2-323 of the Code of Ordinances to update categories and associated salaries for non-union positions.
Colleagues, I learned about an hour before the meeting that we've been asked to consider this tonight. Is there someone from the administration that can speak to it? Director Gill.
Hello? Is there I'm sorry.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I imagine colleagues do too.
Okay.
Just this came late in the day. Obviously, I think I speak for the entire council that we want to vote to increase the salary of city workers. I think that much is clear. A question that I have, my understanding, just from conversations that I've had with directors, is that they were basically instructed to not ask for whatever they're called, code changes, to switch until this comp study is done. There's the salaries for each level are changed with this ordinance, but to not ask for grade changes, that's what they're called, within the department until the comp study is done, because everyone's going to do it at once. But I'm looking at this red line before us, and several of them did change, and I'm trying to understand that.
All right. Do you have a question about specific titles or specific positions? Because there were some, through the president, an answer to your question. There were some that we had to, and we had to change some positions because we had to keep people. We had people that were, going to leave us. We're looking at retention efforts, but there were very few that were changed. Very few, perhaps 4.
I guess the question from my perspective is I think everyone, I don't want to speak for department heads, but certainly on the city council, when we thought about our own salaries, which the idea was we're doing a comp study and no one should jump in line. So I'm trying to understand how the decision was made to do it for certain departments and not others. I just know for a fact situations that I would deem as retention issues that were not changed. Clearly some were deemed change-worthy, and that's the part of this that I'm struggling. I would love to take this vote. I just don't quite understand the picking and choosing.
Right. Through the president, an answer to your question, if I knew what those specific positions were you were referring to, I would have a better answer. I don't know each specific individual thing that was changed, position that was changed, or why. I could speak to it in specific terms, but I don't, off the top of my head, don't know which positions you're referring to.
Director, I got this, an hour before the meeting, so I'm looking through it. There's probably 50 red lines. I would love to be able to vote on this, but I'm trying to understand
Point of information,
Councilor
Mr.
Davis.
President, and I could be totally wrong on this because I was looking at I looked at it and thought the same thing you did, but it seems like perhaps many of the changes are to put things in alphabetical order, not to change the levels. Is that Am I reading that
That's
right?
correct. I have it in front of me through the president to Councilor Davis. Most of the changes that were made were updates to the ordinance, and they were either, categorized incorrectly in the previous ordinance, or titles changed. They weren't necessarily reclassified, but those titles had changed. They no longer fit the position. They were in wrong alphabetical order. Most, if not all of the ones that I'm looking at, were in fact just really due to clerical errors.
Councilor Davis?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for letting me interrupt you. So thank you, Director Gill, for that. So, but you did say a moment ago that you thought perhaps there were some where the grade was changed. Is that the case?
Not to my knowledge. There were no grade changes. There were no changes to the position. There may have been a change to perhaps a step in a position, but there were no significant changes. To new classifications, no.
Well, so I guess, Mr. President, back to you. I think we clarified the point on the lot of the numerous changes on the page, Mr. President. But I think your question, I have the same question you have, which to whatever extent there are any step changes or any changes made for purposes of retention, why those and not all the other positions we've been talking about tonight and for the past several weeks, where we've been told, got to wait for the wage study, got to wait for the wage study, got to wait for the wage study. I have a really hard. I'm going to need some serious convincing that to undo all of the convincing that I've heard for the last month that the wage study is the thing we have to wait for, and we shouldn't do anything up to that point. That's where I am right now. So it's going to take a lot of work to convince me otherwise.
Councilor Scott, on this point, yeah.
On this point, I want to correct something that was untrue that was just said. For example, I have nothing against Mr. Golden, but the chief assessor and chairman of the board of assessors is amended from an NU04 to an NU03. That's not a step. That is a grade change. I believe Director of Parks and Recreation was moved up from an NU05 to NU04. So just on the first page of this, I can find two of these examples. I have not gone through more. I just wanted to confirm that you were not incorrect and that what we heard there was incorrect. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Director, those were the two that I've seen in my quick. I wish that this had come at a time when we could go to committee and just ask normal questions about it. Obviously, I do not want, this is not, it's not a good position for the city council to be put in, because we all want to vote for these just regular old salary increases, but there are also what appear to be a small number of positions that were kind of picked and choose for grade changes that in any normal circumstance, we'd go to committee, we'd ask questions, and that's what I'm trying to understand. Councilor Kelly?
Through the president, to the president, I should say, I'm confused. Why can't we send this to committee to talk about? Quite frankly, this feels like when I was an advocate in the State House and leadership would bring a bill mere hours before it was getting voted on. I haven't looked at this. I really feel uncomfortable voting on this tonight. Everyone knows I'm a detail-oriented person. So just that fact alone, never mind the fact that we just spent almost 2 hours talking about compensation for employees that we literally cannot hire because we don't have money to hire them at rates that is prevailing wages and acceptable in the industry. So quite frankly, I don't really want to vote on this tonight, but it would be helpful to clarify why we have to vote on this tonight.
Thank you, Councilor. That is a good point. There's not some legal reason we need to vote on it tonight. There is employees of the city would get a raise on July 1st if we vote it tonight, and later if it goes to committee and comes back at a future meeting. That's the, this is to raise the increase of everyone on this list, right? Just got a bunch of questions. Councilor Scott.
Just on that point, that's also incorrect. The only pay being raised by this change, the steps and grades that currently exist are not being changed. There are 2 additional steps being added at the bottom of it. So this does not affect the pay raises of everybody in the city. This affects the pay raises of only the very few individuals who are being moved in this table, and codifies the new position titles. So I just want to make very clear that this isn't postponing everybody in the city's pay raise.
Thank you, Councilor Scott. I wish that I had had more than 20 minutes to read and think about this. I see some hands up, and I see some directors talking to each other. Councilor Burnley?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I have a very specific question about one of these that actually isn't a salary change, but is a position title change. There's a previously this ordinance would read a recruitment manager, and now it is a recruitment and retention manager. I'm just curious if that came with additional changes to the job description of that role, because I see that the grade step has not changed at all.
Through the president to Councilor Burnley, the recruitment and retention manager is a recruitment manager, and she was promoted long before the compensation was studied. She was promoted last year. So we have a recruitment manager and we have a recruiter. Is that what you're referring to?
Respectfully, I don't think that is the answer I was looking for. I'm just saying that the recruitment manager is now, the change to this ordinance says it is now the recruitment and retention manager, and I'm just wondering if that retention aspect requires additional work to that job description that could be construed as needing an additional grade step or something to that order.
No, it did not.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, for the positions that you just mentioned, President Campen, is those positions were changed before we asked about the compensation study. Again, most of what you're looking at here, if not all, is because they were mischaracterized or misplaced to begin with, that they were in fact promoted, or not promoted, but given reclassifications a long time ago.
I'm sorry to do this. I just want to put this to my colleagues. Is there anyone who's comfortable voting on this tonight? I don't want to be the person slowing it down, but I just don't fully understand what we're being asked to vote on. And Councilor Pineda-Newfield?
I'm personally not, and I wanted to note that if this gets sent to committee, we have a CAPA meeting scheduled for the 10th, so we would get this in before recess. So if that sways any of this conversation, I wanted to note that as well.
Councilor Gomez-Mocod.
And quick question. If we were to approve it after June 30th, can't you do a retroactive as well?
Yes.
Anyways? Or you can't do that in this?
Okay.
It's by ordinance? Oh, okay. Sorry.
Director Bean, did you want to answer that question?
Through you, Mr. President, the question is, can a retroactive happen? Let's assuming this doesn't get amended by June 30th. Let's say it's amended in July. Yes, because it can be retroactive to July 1. Okay. But the new rates don't go into effect until you have approved the ordinance.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Mr. President, I'm curious how this will affect the Poplar Street pump station. Seriously, no, my serious point is I got pressured into voting because of doom and gloom. I don't want to get pressured into voting for happiness and sunshine tonight. I don't want to take a vote on this just yet.
All right, I think it's clear from my earlier comments that I don't really understand this. So let's refer this to, I think this is a finance item. Is that correct? Finance. Yeah, let's refer this to the Committee on Finance. Thank you. Okay, just a moment, folks.
The next item is item 7.2, a request of the mayor requesting approval of the First Amendment to fiber optic communications easement agreement with Tordex.
Councilor Wilson?
Yeah, Mr. President, I'd like to ask that this be sent to Finance, and as well as waive the readings of 7.6 and 7.7, and have those also sent to Finance if you see fit. Thanks.
Those items are referred to Finance.
Item 7.8.
Councilor Pineda-Newfield waives the reading of 7.8 to 7.10 and I will refer those to confirmation of appointments.
Item 7.11 is the mayor's communication conveying the appointment of Evelyn Persoff to the Municipal Compensation Advisory Board.
Placed on file.
Item 8.1 is an officer's communication from the school committee conveying a resolution regarding the Winter Hill Community Innovation School approved at the school committee meeting of June 12th, 2023.
Placed on file.
Item 9.1 is a new garage license for New England Collision Center at 224 Somerville Ave.
Chair.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Clerk, correct me, this has to go to committee? Yes, that's what I thought. I'd like to move for 9.1 to go to licenses and permits.
That item is referred to license and permits.
And I would like to waive the readings of items 9.2 through 9.15 and take them all up at once. And then I know I have some comments from my colleagues about some of these, but first I have to give my annual epic introduction to these items. We have a bevy of items on the way, including a number of block parties, multiple religious events, including the Holy Ghost Fest on July 7th, 8th, and 9th, and a public event at St. Bernard Parish on July 9th for A Mile with Jesus. In addition to that, on August 19th, we have the family bike ride at 9:30 a.m. It's a wonderful event. It's like 100 kids and their parents and just random, and also Councilor Gomez. No, please don't. No, wait a second. Please don't. Thank you. Just let me get through my speech I worked so hard on. On the same day, we also have the annual Evolution of Hip Hop event, which is a wonderful, great event in Ward 2. I try to go every time it is on, and if folks like listening to music and dancing and just seeing some amazing performers, please come down August 19th. And of course, Honk Fest is coming. Honk Fest, which will be October 6th, 7th, and 8th, and have various performers across the city doing some good old honking. If you're interested, you can apply now at 6. I'm not going to give my number out right now, but it's public information, but I don't want to break any campaign finance laws, so I will also I would love to yield before I move to approve these to my large Councilor Wilson, to speak to one of these items as well.
Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, I hope I'm not jumping in front of anyone. Yeah, I just wanted to, it's a tough act to follow, but the family bike ride on the CPX, I talked to Paul Morgan about this, and I want to thank Councilor Gomez-Moacott for flagging this for me. I'll be one of the marshals there for this, and I just want to encourage the public to come to this. It sounds like an amazing event. Paul does a really good job with these rides, and also just encourage any colleagues who want to join us in being marshals for this. I look forward to that one, as well as the aforementioned Evolution of Hip Hop event.
Oh, you don't like honk, Councilor Wilson? Councilor Gomez-Moacott?
I was just going to encourage my colleagues to volunteer to be marshals for this event. I think Paul Morgan has emailed you, some of you I texted. It's really fun, so if you can, please do.
I'm signed up myself. All right, Councilor Brindley.
And to bring this home, I will say I don't remember getting an invitation from Paul Morgan myself. I'm surprised by that because I was a marshal last year. Yeah, we got to talk to that guy. But Paul is one of the unsung heroes of Somerville. He not only puts on these events and helps shepherd our families through the community, he also helped transport dozens of bikes to the Mystics earlier this year to help give out bikes to families in the Mystics. To no credit and no public appeal. So if you can get involved with this, you meet your neighbors, bring your friends and family and kids, all the better. And with that, I'd like to move for all these items to be approved.
And his mother is a wonderful birder and bird photographer. Those items are approved.
Item 9.16 is a public communication from Daniel and Leba Savitt requesting an amendment to the zoning ordinance map to change the zoning district of 113 Prospect Street from UR to NR.
That item is referred to land use with a copy to the planning board.
Item 9.7.
Councilor Scott, sorry. On that.
Thank you. I am not on land use, but I know the Savitts very well. They have been trapped in a problem wherein they have a house. It just happens to be in the UR district, and because a house is not a building in the UR district, they have been unable to add a bedroom onto their house. for years. So this is just the last-ditch attempt to try to get them to be able to do a simple modification on their house. I think there is a larger underlying problem with our zoning ordinance, but as my colleague from Ward 1 will attest, it is very hard to get attention on underlying or major problems in the ordinance. So this is just their request to accommodate a simple modification of the home. Thank you.
Councilor McLaughlin.
President, I will do my best to bring this up in committee, and I only wish this council had the power to make such amendments citywide. So I'll take this up, and I would like to suggest maybe taking item 9.17 and 9.17 to 9.21 and waive the readings to place on file.
Seeing no disagreement, those items are placed on file.
The next item will be item 10.3, a request of the mayor requesting ordainment of an amendment to sections 763 through 767 of the Code of Ordinances, the condominium conversion ordinance.
That item is referred to legislative matters.
Item 10.5 is a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $82,715 from free cash to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Councilor Burnley.
Through the chair, thank you. That's it.
Seeing no discussion, that item is approved.
Item 10.8 is a public communication from Corey Donahue submitting comments regarding the climate forward carbon emission goals.
That item and the next are placed on file.
And that brings us to the end of the agenda for the evening, Mr. President.
Are there any late items?
I see no late items before the council.
Well, colleagues, Highland Ave in front of City Hall is going to be shut down in one direction starting next week. If you go to the Spring Hill Sewer website, you will see all the detour information. It will be challenging. We have a great team in place. Alert your constituencies. This meeting is adjourned.